Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. Marvel's Master of Magic. Chapter 1 Artificial Mutant Experiment Number 757. Doctor, the test results of Subject 757 are out. A few levels. Level 2. Level 2, which means that even if the ability is fully developed, it can only be used to read minds and control magnetic forces of no more than 50 kilograms. Yes, Doctor, that's the case according to our current research data on mutants. It seems that it is impossible to merge the genes of Professor X and Magneto to create the strongest artificial mutant. Let's stop here for this experiment. Next, we will focus on the research of X-24. He is our most powerful weapon. So should Subject 757 be disposed of like the previous subjects? Keep him and train him with those kids. After all, he is a fusion of Professor X and Magneto's genes. Even if he is only level 2, he can be of some use if he is developed well. Yes, Doctor. Number 757, be decisive and ruthless, attack my vital points, don't hesitate, you loser. On the training ground, a muscular man holding a dagger was launching a fierce attack on a young man of about 17 or 18 years old. The young man used his ability to control the dagger to defend and block, while trying hard to find an opportunity to counterattack with his fists, but it was obvious that he was not skilled enough and could not make a good judgment. We both control magnetism, but my control of magnetism is too inferior to Magneto's. The young man's surname is Xiao Mingzi. He is a time traveler who traveled through time and space 3 months ago and was reborn into the body of an artificial genetic mutant called Subject 757. His mutant powers are mind reading and magnetism control. Unfortunately, his mind reading ability is only successful when the other party is completely off guard, and it can only read the current mental state, but cannot read the memories deep in the mind. And his control over magnetism is even worse. Currently, it can only control objects weighing less than 10 kilograms. Although it is not bad if used well, it is far inferior to Magneto, who can lift an entire stadium and fly at will. It's okay against ordinary people, but if you encounter someone who is good at defense like the Stone Man, Colossus, and the White Queen, you can't break their defense at all. His goal now is to find a way to escape from this cruel laboratory. Ring ring ring. A shrill bell rang, and a staff member in a white coat came in, stopped the training, and put a high-tech device around his neck. Subject 757, it's time for you to have dinner. Yes. George replied in a somewhat stiff voice, then obediently followed the staff member out of the room. The device worn around his neck is called the Mutant Inhibitor. Once it is worn around his neck, his abilities will completely disappear and he will become an ordinary person. Normally, he has to wear this suppressor except during training and combat. Walking in the long corridor, besides him, there were many mutants being brought out from various training grounds by the staff. The only difference is that they are younger, looking only 12 or 13 years old. Marvel World, this is such a dangerous world. Seeing this scene, George couldn't help but sigh. From the moment he knew he was a mutant, he knew he had come to the Marvel world. He has some knowledge about Marvel, after all, he watches movies occasionally. But he is not a veteran Marvel fan. As far as he knows, there are many universes in the Marvel world, and the stories that happen in different universes are also different, but what is certain is that few universes are peaceful. It's not too scary if half of the people in the universe disappear like Thanos did, and it's normal if the entire universe disappears. But now that I have traveled through time, I can only try my best to survive. Who wants to die when they can live? He is a person who loves life very much. If possible, he really wants to live forever. Some people say that immortality is a curse, and it is very painful to watch people around you die one by one. But he felt that compared with the benefits of immortality, that small price was nothing. Deep down, who among the people of our great celestial empire doesn't want to cultivate immortality? Even after Qin unified the 6 kingdoms, he still sent his men to find him the elixir of life. Based on his observations over the past month, he can now roughly confirm that the Marvel world he is in may have a lot to do with the world of Wolverine 3. Because he saw the little wolf girl among these children, an X-23, who had the same self-healing ability and adamantium claws as Wolverine. But what surprised him was that the current time was not 2029 as in the movie, but 2009. And from the daily gossip of those staff members, we can also learn that this universe also has Playboy Tony Stark and Captain America. According to the timeline of Wolverine 2009, Wolf Girl was not born in, but the little girl in front of him with a determined look is obviously about 12 or 13 years old. So this isn't the mutant universe, nor is it the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but rather a Marvel universe that he doesn't know about. It doesn't matter if the time doesn't match, as long as what's supposed to happen happens. Whether it's 2029 or 2009, it doesn't really matter to him. He just hopes that these mutant kids can escape from prison as usual, so that he will have a chance to escape from the laboratory. According to the plot of Wolverine 3, it shouldn't be long before a kind female nurse helps these mutant children escape from the laboratory. In order to maintain an honest, obedient, and easy-to-control personality, George, as usual, did not communicate with anyone. After dinner, he quietly returned to his room and closed his eyes to sleep. The entire laboratory is equipped with surveillance cameras. He must hide any emotions and prevent himself from being noticed to be abnormal, so as to reduce the staff's vigilance towards him. In order to lower his guard, he even concealed some of his strengths during training, such as controlling the speed of the dagger's attack and some ideas about his own abilities. Of course, you can't act too useless, otherwise you might be treated as garbage. What's going on? It hurts. In a daze, George suddenly felt a pain as if his soul was torn apart, but the pain came and went quickly and did not torture him too much. But after the pain passed, he found that he seemed to have entered a very strange state. He suddenly opened his eyes, and two completely different perspectives appeared in his eyes. One was the view of his laboratory bedroom that he could normally see now, and the other was in a very shabby cubicle. At the same time, he felt that he suddenly had another body, and that body could be controlled as freely as his current body. How to describe it? It was like he suddenly had an extra clone that he could control. The original body closed his eyes and lay back on the bed, focusing his attention mainly on the clone. Suddenly, a series of memories flashed through his mind like a movie. After these memories finished flashing, he couldn't help but mutter. This is actually Harry Potter's Wizarding World. The 11-year-old child in my memory was called Dora. She was originally an orphan in an orphanage. Later, because of the strange manifestations unique to her wizard blood, she was adopted by a wizard from Nocturne Alley. But this wizard is not a good person, but a hidden dark wizard. He adopted Dora just for the purpose of conducting experiments in dark magic and potions, and also to have an extra free laborer. After all, using muggles for experiments would easily attract the attention of the Ministry of Magic, but using one's own adopted son would be different. As long as he doesn't say it, no one will find out. Even if he dies accidentally one day, he can say it was an accident. Besides, many black magic and potions have different effects on muggles and wizards, so experiments on wizards can better test the effects. In this way, poor Dora grew up under the torture of the dark wizard. Because of the long-term torture, Dora's character became very cowardly. He dared not resist the dark wizard, nor did he dare to tell others about his situation. He lived a miserable life every day, even worse than that of a house elf. Dora had originally hoped to be admitted to Hogwarts at the age of 11 so that she could escape the clutches of the dark wizards. Unfortunately, he did receive an admission letter, but the dark wizard did not intend to let him go to Hogwarts. For young wizards born in Muggle families, as long as they reach the age of 11, they will definitely be admitted to Hogwarts regardless of their parents' consent or not. Because if the young wizard does not learn magic and does not know how to channel his magical power, he will develop fear and disgust for his unknown abilities. Under extreme emotions, he may very likely become an obscurus, which is absolutely not allowed in the magic world. But for children from wizarding families, there are not so many requirements. Wizarding parents can choose not only Hogwarts, but also other magic schools such as Beauxbatons, Durmstrang, and Ilvermorny. Even to save money, you can send your child to a magic training class, or wizard parents can teach their children magic themselves. After learning from the dark wizard that she could not go to Hogwarts, Dora completely collapsed and committed suicide by drinking potion in her cubicle at night. For some reason, George's split soul occupied Dora's body and became the new owner of this body. It's really miserable. After reading Dora's memory, George couldn't help but sigh. Come over. George didn't know if it was the after effect of Dora taking the potion to commit suicide, but he felt very thirsty and subconsciously activated his ability on the iron cup on the table. And the cup quickly flew into his hands. George raised his hand and drank the water in the cup in one gulp, and suddenly he was stunned. My ability can actually be activated with this body. Yes, what he just used was the mutant's control over magnetism, but it was not his real body that was using it, but the clone in this world. Could it be that the innate abilities of the two worlds can be shared? At this time, George had a bold guess in his mind. Turning his attention to the main body again, he indeed discovered that there was something extra inside Marvel's main body. According to Dora's common sense about wizards, that is the unique magic in the wizard's blood. If that's the case, that would be great. At this moment, a series of plans have been unfolded in George's mind. Chapter 2: The Dark Wizard's Murder. Sharing of abilities means that as long as his clone learns all kinds of magical skills in the Harry Potter world, his original body in the Marvel world can also use the same skills. Even though he doesn't have a wand in the Marvel world, it doesn't matter. According to him, not everyone in the Harry Potter world uses wands to cast spells. High-level wizards can do it without a wand. Wizards in Africa have also been using traditional hand gestures to cast spells. It's just that wands can release spells faster and have better effects, so most wizards choose to use wands to cast spells. Or he may learn to make a wand himself later. There are many things with special energy in the Marvel world, so it may be possible for him to find suitable materials to make a wand. Although the magic in the Harry Potter world is not very destructive, it is very functional, and some magic even seems to touch upon very high-level rules. Apart from anything else, as long as he can learn the apparition, at least in the Marvel world, he can escape even if he can't defeat most enemies. But before that, we have to think about how to properly kill that dark wizard. If it were George in his previous life, he really wouldn't dare to kill someone. In his previous life, he was just a social animal. Not to mention killing people, he had never even killed a chicken. When he went to the supermarket to buy vegetables, he only bought naked chickens that had been processed by others. However, in this life, it only took 3 months for him to get used to it. Because in these 3 months, he has killed 12 people in actual combat. The laboratory does not keep useless people. As a mutant who is being trained to be a killer in the future, in addition to practicing normal abilities, he is also learning how to kill people. And the fastest way is actual combat. He had no choice, because in actual combat, if he didn't kill someone, he would be killed. This is also one of the reasons why he is eager to escape from the laboratory. Although he is not a good man, he has his own bottom line and does not like to kill innocent people. In fact, he could also choose to report the Dark Wizard. At this time, if he reported the Dark Wizard to the Ministry of Magic, he would most likely succeed. It just so happened that he lived in Nocturne Alley with the Dark Wizards, so he had easy access to Aurors. Dora didn't dare to do this because she grew up under the torture of dark wizards. The fear of dark wizards was engraved in her bones, and she would rather commit suicide than resist. However, this may have consequences. That is, if the Aurors fail to take action in time, the dark wizard will have the opportunity to abscond with the money and may even retaliate against him. And if he could kill the dark wizard without leaving any trace, he would not only be able to eliminate future troubles, but also inherit all of the dark wizard's legacy. Through Dora's memory, he knew that the dark wizard had no relatives long ago, and once the dark wizard died, he, the adopted son, would be the only heir. Besides, he was not without confidence. First of all, the dark wizard had absolutely no defenses against him. Because in the eyes of the dark wizards, Dora was a very timid child who didn't even have a wand and had never learned any spells. Secondly, he has experience using his ability to control blades to kill ordinary mercenaries in single combat. When a wizard is caught off guard and attacked, his reaction ability is not much faster than that of an ordinary person. At most, he has a special physique and is not so easy to die. Finally, since he wasn't using magic and didn't have a wand, the chances of being discovered by the Aurors afterwards were very small. Of course, it's hard to say for sure, and there is a possibility of failure. But wealth and honor are achieved through risk. If he succeeds in this project, he will not only have a house in this world, but also gain a lot of wealth, which is enough for him to concentrate on studying and learning magic in the early stages. As far as he knew, the Dark Wizard had made a lot of money over the years by selling various illegal potions. You woke up half an hour late today. Do you want me to use the transfiguration spell again, turn you into a mouse, hang you up over a candle and roast you? Just as George was thinking, the door of the room was suddenly opened, and a bald old man in a black wizard robe looked at George with eyes as cold as a snake. "Excuse me, Mr. Murden, I'll be right there." George imitated Dora's usual fearful look and quickly got up and dressed. Seeing this, the bald old wizard narrowed his eyes and said, "Little Dora, don't worry. Although I have helped you reject the admission notice of Hogwarts, as long as you serve me well as before, I will teach you some powerful magic. It will not be worse than going to Hogwarts. Powerful magic, probably magic for cleaning and cooking. George grumbled to himself, but appeared submissive on the surface. When I came out of the small room, the sun had just risen outside. It was around 6:30 in the morning. It's night in Marvel and daytime here, which is quite convenient. He still felt a little strange controlling two bodies at the same time. Now, he could adapt himself by sleeping at night and moving during the day. After leaving the small room downstairs, according to Dora's memory, he began to prepare breakfast for the old wizard, clean the shop, stand at the door to attract customers, etc. as usual. There aren't many normal customers in the potion shop in Nocturne Alley. Normal wizards won't go to Nocturne Alley to buy potions. There's a regular potion shop in Diagon Alley. Most of the people who come here to buy potions are dark wizards, or some wizards who don't obey the laws of the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic usually turns a blind eye to such behavior. Almost all wizards knew what was in Nocturne Alley, so how could the Ministry of Magic not know? In George's opinion, this was also a normal situation. Rather than letting the dark wizards mess around in private, it would be better to leave a Nocturne Alley. This way, if something goes wrong, there will be clues to track down. Moreover, many upper-class wizards in the wizarding world also need the existence of a place like Nocturne Alley. Lucius Malfoy, a distinguished figure in the wizarding world, would occasionally resell the banned potions and magical items he made here for money. In this way, until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, George finally found the right opportunity to take action. I'm going to make a crazy potion. I'll close the shop for now and stand guard at the door. Don't let anyone disturb me, or I'll make you live a life worse than death. The old wizard carefully took out precious magical herbs from several boxes and glared at George fiercely. George immediately lowered his head and trembled as he replied. Yes, yes, I will definitely not let anyone disturb you. The old wizard's words were not a threat. Previously, Dora was negligent and caused the old wizard to be disturbed by the guests when he was making a potion, which resulted in the failure of the potion. Dora was tortured by the old wizard's black magic for the whole night and almost died. However, this is also a perfect opportunity for George to kill the old wizard. According to what he knew from Dora's memory, the insanity potion was a high-level magic potion. Once taken, a person's mind would be in chaos and he would become a madman. So it's quite valuable. However, the preparation of this potion is extremely difficult and the process is also dangerous. If the operation is not done properly, an explosion may easily occur, causing injury or even death to the wizard. In fact, the making of potions, especially high-level potions, is not a safe thing. Almost every year, wizards die accidentally while making potions. This is also one of the reasons why high-level potions are expensive in the wizarding world, but powerful potion masters are rare. Seeing the old wizard walk into the special potion-making hut in the backyard, George immediately closed the shop door, tiptoed to the window next to the hut, and began to peek. The old wizard took out herbs such as arioth, poisonous tentacles, lacewings, and two-headed snake gall in front of the potion-making vessel, began to process them one by one, and then put them into the crucible to boil. The old wizard did not teach Dora any magic, but in order to enable him to better serve customers, he taught him a lot of knowledge in herbology and potions. So based on Dora's memory, George knew that problems were most likely to occur when wizards were brewing potions. Because at this time the wizard not only has to cast the corresponding spell wholeheartedly, but also has to continuously input magic power to blend the potion. Blow it up. After enduring for a full hour, seeing that the old wizard had finally reached the stage of brewing the potion, George immediately activated his ability, causing the candlestick on the table to collapse unexpectedly, knocking over the crucible that was brewing the potion. The paste-like medicine immediately spilled onto the table and merged with the unused herbs on the table. Not good. The old wizard quickly interrupted the refining process, and cold sweat suddenly broke out on his forehead. He wanted to cast a spell to defend himself, but as soon as he raised his wand, the paste-like potion exploded. The old wizard was blown away by the head-on attack. He first hit the wall of the hut hard, then fell down and spit out several mouthfuls of blood. A wizard's body is indeed much stronger than that of an ordinary person. Seeing that the old wizard in his 70s or 80s was blown up like this and was not dead yet, George couldn't help but sigh in his heart. If an ordinary person, even a young adult, were hit by such a blow, he would probably be dead. This was not a simple explosion, but an explosion caused by a failed potion-making process, mixed with the backlash of magic and the riot of magic power. It was not as simple as it seemed. Then I'll give you another hard one. At this time, veins on George's forehead were bulging, and he used all his abilities towards the chandelier above the cabin. After possessing the blood of a wizard, he found that his mutant abilities seemed to have improved significantly. Before, he could only control 10 kilograms of weight, but now with all his strength, he can control at least 50 kilograms. If it is fully developed in the future, it will definitely exceed the original limit of 100 kilograms. The chandelier, which was already shaking due to the explosion, fell from the roof in an instant under George's full control and stabbed the old wizard in the face, who had not yet reacted. What? A scream was heard, and under the influence of George's power, the chandelier pierced straight through the old wizard's eyes and into his brain. With a normal wizard's physique, even if he is split, that is, missing arms and legs, as long as he doesn't die immediately, he can be saved with healing magic and potions, and even the arms and legs can be completely reconnected. But if the brain is directly pierced like this, then except for beings of Voldemort's level, few ordinary wizards can survive. Chapter 3 Inheritance. It looks like he is really dead. After waiting for about 5 minutes and seeing that the old wizard didn't move, George carefully pushed the door and walked in. After testing the old wizard's breathing and making sure he was truly dead, he heaved a sigh of relief. He would definitely not be a match for a dark wizard in his 70s or 80s in a head-on battle. He protected his body with the armor spell, and then a simplest stunning spell could easily knock him down. As a dark wizard, to be able to live to such an old age, he must be very capable and may even have some powerful hidden cards. The reason he was able to kill with a sneak attack like this was not because of his great abilities, but because the opponent was completely unprepared. After confirming that the old wizard was dead, George pretended to be panicked, quickly pushed open the closed shop door, and ran towards Diagon Alley. He didn't shout in Nocturne Alley, as that might have attracted some dark wizards with ill intentions before attracting the Aurors. Oh no! Oh no! Mr. Morton was injured in an explosion while making a potion. Is there anyone who can come and save him? After George ran to Diagon Alley, he started shouting and screaming in panic, as if his father had really died. Soon, 2 Aurors patrolling nearby were attracted to him. Take us there quickly. Diagon Alley and Nocturne Alley are places where wizards and dark wizards gather. Aurors patrol here almost 24 hours a day to prevent any incidents from appearing in the news and affecting the Ministry of Magic, especially the reputation of the minister. Besides, it is the beginning of the school year, and many little wizards are brought by their parents to do some shopping. Director Scrimgeour, after testing, no magical fluctuations were found in the second wand, and no property was lost. The possibility of homicide was ruled out. It can be confirmed that the death was an accident caused by potion refining. In Merton's potion shop, a female wizard with pink hair, a pale heart-shaped face, and about 18 or 19 years old was reporting the results of the investigation to the middle-aged wizard standing opposite George. The middle-aged wizard nodded with satisfaction after hearing this. Very detailed analysis, Tonks. It seems that Mad Eye has taught you well this year. If you follow his example carefully, you will be able to become a real Auror in 2 years. Although Mr. Moody has a bad temper, it is my honor to study with him. The witch showed a hint of pride on her face. Although Alastair Moody has retired long ago, he is still a well-known Auror in the wizarding world. More than half of the dark wizards in Azkaban were sent by him. Being able to receive guidance from such a retired Auror during the Auror preparation period made other Aurors of the same class very envious. George, who was eavesdropping at this time, turned his eyes away after hearing the conversation between the two. Scrimgeour, head of the Auror office, is that the same Rufus Scrimgeour who later succeeded Cornelius Fudge as Minister for Magic? And Tonks, the Nymphadora Tonks of Metamorphmagus. He carefully recalled his memories of his previous life and gradually had some impression of the identities of the two people in front of him. After succeeding Cornelius Fudge as the new Minister for Magic, Scrimgeour took a very tough stance against Voldemort and the Death Eaters. Then he was brutally murdered by Voldemort. And this Tonks was born with the ability to change her appearance at will. It seems that she even married Professor Lupin in the end. Unexpectedly, she just graduated and has not yet been hired as a full-time employee. It seems like Professor Lupin is really an old man who is looking for young grass. Of course, this is not important. What is important is that he knows that Scrimgeour and Tonks are both relatively responsible Aurors, which is a good thing for him now. Are Aurors necessarily good people? Not always. Corruption is rampant in the Ministry of Magic today, and many Aurors are involved. If he met a greedy Auror, it would be hard to say how much of the inheritance he would be able to inherit. What a poor child! He was adopted with great difficulty, but now he's an orphan again. After handing the investigation report to the director, Tonks turned to look at George with sympathy in her eyes. After the investigation just now, she naturally knew the background of this thin boy. That's not necessarily the case. Maybe it's a good thing for him. However, upon hearing Tonks's sigh, Scrimgeour shook his head. As the director of the Auror office, he had been in the industry for so many years and knew very well what kind of people the wizards in Nocturne Alley were like. From the boy's thin and scarred body, he had already seen through the trick and guessed most of it. That's why it is said that this is a good thing for the little boy. At least he can inherit a considerable inheritance and go to Hogwarts to study. Child, your name is Dora, right? Because Mr. Merton died unexpectedly, you are my only relative, so... Scrimgeour came up to George and gave him a brief account of the situation. There are two main points. One is that George can inherit the Dark Wizard's shop and the money saved in Gringotts. Second, the Dark Wizard died, and there was no one to teach George magic, so he had to go to Hogwarts to study. Both of these points were within George's expectations, and he readily agreed. During the entire investigation, he did not appear to be too sad. Because it was too fake, and he didn't have such good acting skills that he could fool Scrimgeour, who was obviously a veteran. But in the end he made a request. Sir, I don't want to use the name Dora anymore. Can I change my name? He was not familiar with the name Dora, so if possible, he should change it back to George, which sounded better. Of course, Miss Tonks will take you through all the inheritance formalities tomorrow. If you need, she can also help you change your name. Scrimgeour was not too surprised by George's request. He thought George might want to forget some bad memories in this way. Don't worry, leave it to me. At this time, Tonks stepped forward, pressed her hand on George's head, and rubbed it gently. She was not stupid, and she had already sensed something from the conversation between the director and George. Thank you very much, Miss Auror. Hearing this, George thanked him very politely. It's certainly not a bad thing to have the opportunity to get in touch with the Aurors, especially since he might need their help in the future. Nocturne Alley is not a good place. He inherited the legacy of a dark wizard, just like a child walking on the street with a piece of gold, which will definitely attract envy. I dare not do anything openly, but it is hard to say what I will do secretly. What a sensible boy! Seeing that George was so sensible and polite at such a young age, Tonks immediately felt more favorable towards him. For adults, most of them don't hate children that much. What they really hate are those naughty children and their naughty parents. If you meet an obedient and polite child, many people are willing to help. Chapter 4 Signs of Prison Break. Although today's move was a bit risky, it now seems that everything is worth it. After Scrimgeour, Tonks, and several Aurors dealt with the scene and left, George lay on the Dark Wizard's comfortable bed in the bedroom and couldn't help but sigh. Not to mention the savings that the old wizard Gringotts had accumulated for most of his life, this potion shop and the potions and herbs in it alone were a considerable fortune. Maybe these are nothing compared to the real rich people in the wizarding world, but for a small wizard, they are more than enough. It's like an adult owning a fortune of 1 million. It may not be worth showing off, but if a child who has just entered junior high school has 1 million in pocket money, he can definitely beat most of the students in the country. With this large sum of money, many things will be easier. In fact, he had thought about selling the potion shop and moving into the Leaky Cauldron after inheriting the estate for safety reasons. But think about it and forget it. Because he would definitely need such a private place in the future to study some magic that could not be discovered. Moreover, this potion shop may be of many uses in the future. It is easy to sell it, but it is difficult to buy it back. This child looks really thin. He needs to eat more to replenish his body. Sitting up, George walked around the bedroom. Then came to the mirror in the bedroom and took a good look at the body of this world. Ever since he woke up, he had been planning how to properly kill the old wizard, and he hadn't even taken a good look at this body. With blonde hair, blue eyes, and a high nose bridge, his facial features look pretty good, but due to long-term malnutrition and torture, his body is rather thin. But this is not a big problem, you will recover if you take good care of yourself. Fortunately, I'm not that weak inside. George bent his legs and jumped hard, and unexpectedly jumped to a height of more than 3 meters easily, and reached out to touch the ceiling. It's not because he is a wizard that he has such strong jumping ability. The wizard's body is indeed different from that of ordinary people, and has the ability to withstand blows and recover better than ordinary people. But in terms of strength, unless they have special blood like Hagrid, they are no different from normal muggles. The reason why George is so special is that his body not only possesses the mutant abilities of the Marvel World's body, but also inherits the physical strength. In other words, his current strength is the sum of the physical strength of 11-year-old Dora and the physical strength of 18-year-old artificial mutant number 757. Artificial mutant number 757, although his ability is not like Beast and Wolverine's physical enhancement, his body is also a normal-year-old adult. In addition, during these 3 months, he not only had to train his abilities in the Marvel world, but also had to train his physical fitness in close combat. His physical fitness is much stronger than that of a normal 18-year-old young man. If we use rough data to reflect this, if Dora's body strength is 50 kg per punch and No 757's body strength is 200 kg per punch, then now the strength of Dora and number 757 is both around 250 kg. Of course, this is just a rough feeling, and the specific details should be based on measured data. For number 757, an extra 50 kg is not actually noticeable, but for Dora, an extra 200 kg of strength is a huge change. Especially since Dora's body is very light now, weighing only 50 kg, and she suddenly gained the all-round bonus of No 757's body, it became even more obvious, and she could jump 3 meters away with a light leap. His physical agility is comparable to that of a cat. I am considered a super kid among kids. After a rough physical examination, George began to search the old wizard's bedroom. He wanted to see if he could find the forbidden black magic book hidden by the old wizard, or the notes on studying black magic, so that he could learn some powerful black magic in advance. However, the result disappointed him. He did not find any special magic books. They were just normal magic books that could be bought in bookstores. Actually, think about it, the shops in Nocturne Alley are routinely inspected once a month. Even if there are any, the old wizard would not dare to hide them openly at home. Forget it, let this body rest first. It's been a long day. Not finding anything useful, George simply washed up and lay down on the old wizard's luxurious big bed, letting this body enter sleep mode. At the same time, he put his main focus back on Marvel's main body. It is already daytime here in Marvel and it is time for daily training. It should be soon. I should hurry up and learn some useful magic first. After the morning training, George ate his lunch with an expressionless face, but his eyes were glancing at the mutant children gathered over there. Just now when he passed by the corridor, he saw a female nurse being scolded by the supervisor here. The cause seemed to be that the female nurse specially prepared a cake, wanting to celebrate a birthday together for those mutant children who had never had a birthday. If he remembered correctly, not long after this incident happened, the female nurse came to her senses and escaped from prison with the mutant children. He trained as usual in the afternoon, and after his main body fell asleep at night, his mind once again turned to the world of Harry Potter. It is morning here. He got up, tidied himself, made himself a hearty breakfast, and took out the daily prophet that was delivered to the door by an owl. George ate his delicious breakfast while reading the newspaper that the old wizard had subscribed to. The food at the experimental base was nutritious, but the taste was really not to his taste. When the dark wizard was still alive, Dora had difficulty even getting enough to eat, let alone the taste. Mr. Gilderoy Lockhart, an internationally renowned figure and writer, winner of the Order of Merlin, 3rd degree, honorary member of the League Against the Dark Arts, and 5-time winner of the Witch Weekly's Most Charming Smile Award. Looking at the flashy wizard in the forget-me-not blue robe in the Daily Prophet, George couldn't help but sigh. It would have been great if I could have come a year earlier. At least I could have been in the same class as the Iron Trio. Maybe we could have been assigned to the same college and dormitory. Yes, it is not 1991 now, but 1992, which is the second year that Harry Potter enters Hogwarts. He will enter 1 year later than Harry Potter. Being with the 3 little ones, well, has its pros and cons. The con is that it's easy for them to get involved in a lot of things, which affects his learning of magic. The good thing is that he is aware of these events, and as long as they are handled properly, there will basically be no danger in the end, and he can also gain some additional benefits from it. Chapter 5, The Magnificent Ministry of Magic. It doesn't matter if it's a smaller class. What's most important is that I can learn magic. George put down the newspaper in his hand and thought while eating. He had actually thought about which house he might be sorted into at the sorting ceremony. I think it's most likely Gryffindor. Gryffindor values courage, and he thinks he is quite brave. He took over this clone just yesterday and made a plan to successfully kill an old wizard. Good morning, Dora. Oh no, your new name should be George. The door of the shop was pushed open, and a young and energetic female wizard walked in. It was the female Aurora Tonks from yesterday. Good morning, Miss Tonks. Seeing this, George put down the omelette in his hand, smiled and greeted him. Tonks sat down opposite George unceremoniously and rubbed his head. Don't be so distant. Just treat me as your sister from now on. George reluctantly tidied up his messed up hair. He did not reject Tonks's approach, but brought out the second breakfast that had been prepared in advance. I made an extra portion this morning, let's eat together. How do you know I didn't have breakfast? What is this? It tastes delicious. Tonks tasted the rolled omelette on the plate and her eyes lit up immediately. The soft pancake was filled with vegetables and sausages, which had a unique flavor. Her cooking skills are terrible, so she never makes breakfast. She usually just buys something to make do with it, or simply chooses not to eat breakfast and eats it at noon. Although there are various cooking magics in magic, the prerequisite is that you must know how to cook, so that you can use cooking magic to save time and make delicious food quickly. If you don't know how to cook, even if you use cooking magic and all kinds of ingredients and kitchen utensils are flying around, the food you make in the end will still be unpalatable. This is the same principle as all kinds of housework magic. Only if you know how to do housework can you use housework magic well. This is called an omelette. It's made with eggs and flour, and the vegetables wrapped inside are shredded green peppers and carrots. George briefly introduced the breakfast he made. Of course he didn't know whether Tonks had eaten breakfast or not, but preparing it in advance would improve her favorability regardless of whether she had eaten or not. I didn't expect your cooking skills are so good. I think you will be sorted into Hufflepuff when you are sorted. Although she didn't understand George's introduction, Tonks still gave him a thumbs up, which made George stunned for a moment. I'm not really going to be in Hufflepuff, am I? Then he shook his head again. It didn't really matter if it was Hufflepuff. He personally preferred Gryffindor, but in fact, no matter which house he was assigned to, he felt there were pros and cons. But he still felt that the possibility of Hufflepuff was less likely. Many wizards who graduate from Hufflepuff choose to work in the catering industry, but the hallmark of this profession is not the ability to cook, but rather the qualities of integrity, loyalty, honesty, and fearlessness of hardship. The reason they chose the catering industry is probably because their dormitories are close to the kitchen and they were influenced by it through daily exposure. Except for the last one, he doesn't seem to have much of these qualities. After breakfast, under the guidance of Tonks, George began to go through various inheritance procedures. And the first place they were going to was the famous Ministry of Magic. Hold my arm tight. It might be a little uncomfortable for a while, but just bear with it and it will pass soon. Tonks placed George's hand on her arm, gave him some careful instructions, and then began to chant the spell. Apparition. A slight explosion sounded, and Tonks and George disappeared from the spot in an instant. Nocturne Alley was not far from the Ministry of Magic, so she could apparate directly with George without wasting the use of flow powder. No wonder not all wizards like to use apparition to travel. George felt that he had instantly entered darkness, and then the air was squeezed from all directions, making it almost impossible for him to breathe. It felt as if the chest was tightly squeezed by several iron hoops, the eyeballs were squeezed back into the head, and the eardrums were pressed deep into the skull. Anyway, it's just very awkward and uncomfortable. But the time was very short, it felt like only 1 or 2 seconds, and he saw the light again. It will be a little uncomfortable the first time, but you will get used to it later. At this moment, he could hear Tonks' giggles. Come on, I'll take you to register first. In this way, George was pulled to the reception desk in the center of the hall, and he looked around curiously. It's really gorgeous. After a moment, he couldn't help but let out a sigh. The floor was a dark wooden floor that was polished to a brilliant shine, and the peacock blue ceiling was inlaid with gleaming golden symbols that moved and changed constantly, like a huge overhead bulletin board. There were many gilded fireplaces embedded in the walls on both sides, and wizards dressed in various costumes came in and out of the fireplaces. In the center of the hall is a magic fountain. In the fountain there are 5 statues, one of which is an elegant wizard holding a magic wand, the other is a beautiful witch, and there are centaurs, goblins, and house elves surrounding them. The centaurs, goblins, and house elves all looked at the wizards and witches with infinite admiration, as if there was some special meaning. Of course, this is not the point. The point is that these 5 statues, which look 2 or 3 times larger than real people, are actually made of pure gold. The Daily Prophet, ladies and gentlemen, a copy of the Daily Prophet. There was a wizard from the Daily Prophet selling newspapers next to the fountain. At 12 o'clock noon, after 4 hours, George finally completed all the inheritance procedures and was brought back to the store by Tonks again. Strong on the outside but weak on the inside. No wonder Voldemort easily defeated him. This is George's complaint about the Ministry of Magic. The entire Ministry of Magic looks very magnificent, but in fact, the wizards working in it are very lazy, inefficient, and very corrupt. If Tonks hadn't been with him, he felt that it would have been quite difficult for him to inherit the estate in full. However, it was not completely without gain. At least he saw a lot of interesting things in the Ministry of Magic. There are all kinds of magic items endowed with magical powers by alchemy, as well as various interesting little magics developed for the convenience of office work, etc. I have gained some knowledge. It also made him realize that although the magic in the Harry Potter world rarely has large-scale destructive power and most of it is functional magic, it does not necessarily mean that it is weak. In some ways, it is even more dangerous and terrifying. Because a lot of magic is very idealistic and cannot be judged simply by its external destructive power. Chapter 6 Gringotts Deposit. The last step is to take you to Gringotts. Without staying in the store for long, Tonks continued to take George to Gringotts. Gringotts is the only wizarding bank in the British wizarding world. It is run by goblins and is located on the north side of Diagon Alley. As well as storing money and safeguarding the valuables of witches and wizards, it can also be used to exchange Muggle currency for magical currency. George has now officially inherited the old wizard's estate through the Ministry of Magic, so naturally he has to go to Gringotts to make all the money the old wizard has saved his own. How ugly! Arriving at the door of Gringotts, George muttered to himself as he looked at the goblin guards in scarlet and gold-rimmed uniforms. The fairies and elves in this world are not the beautiful creatures as imagined. Instead, they are very ugly, roughly the same appearance as goblins. Following Tonks up the white steps into the bronze gate of Gringotts, a second silver door appeared before his eyes, with very eye-catching words engraved on it. The general meaning is, don't have any bad ideas about Gringotts' wealth, otherwise you will die miserably. 2 goblin waiters were standing by the silver door. When they saw Tonks and George, they bowed to them and then led them into a tall marble hall. There are about 100 goblins busy here, handling various business for the wizards who come in. Tonks took George to an idle goblin and handed over the various certificates she had just obtained from the Ministry of Magic. Legacy changes to the underground vault. The goblins at Gringotts were not like the staff at the Ministry of Magic. They were extremely efficient and quickly checked all the certificates. After confirming that they were correct, they said to George, "This is the key to the underground vault number 352. Please keep it. Do you need to go to the vault to withdraw money now?" "No need. Just tell me how many gold galleons are left in the vault." George took the key and put it in his pocket. There are still 500 gold galleons left by the old wizard in the store after his death, which is enough for his current needs. There are now a total of 352 gold galleons remaining in the underground vault. No. The goblin glanced through the accounts and replied, "It seems that the potion business is really profitable. I only earn 100 galleons a month now, and after becoming a regular employee, I will only earn 140 galleons." Tonks next to her couldn't help but reveal an envious look. Based on her salary, it would probably take her 10 years to earn that many gold galleons, and that's without any expenses. Otherwise, she might not be able to save that much even in 20 or 30 years. George, who had been frowning, calmed down instantly after hearing Tonks' words. He originally thought that the old wizard had at least 100,000 gold galleons in savings, so he was a little disappointed when he heard that there were only more than 10,000 gold galleons. But if you think about it practically, it's normal. The old wizard opened a potion shop and did black market business, so he must have made money, probably more than a regular potion shop. But it definitely cost a lot to buy this potion shop, and researching potions, especially high-level potions, costs money like water, so the consumption must be very high. Now that there are more than 10,000 gold galleons left, it makes sense. Comparing it with Tonks' salary, more than 10,000 gold galleons is already a lot, enough to squander for a long time. There are 3 types of wizard currency, gold galleons, silver sickles, and copper nuts. 1 gold galleon is equal to 17 silver sickles, and 1 silver sickle is equal to 29 bronze nuts. According to Dora's memory, a copy of the Daily Prophet cost only 5 copper nuts, a normal meal cost about 2 or 3 silver sickles, and the price of a wizard's wand usually did not exceed 10 gold galleons. George, Hogwarts should send you a new admission letter tomorrow morning. Study magic well at Hogwarts. You will definitely make a lot of friends there. I'm leaving now. I'll come to see you when I have time. At the door of Gringotts. Tonks smiled and rubbed George's head again. George's heart moved when he heard this, and then he invited sincerely. Sister Tonks, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to inherit the estate so smoothly. I want to treat you to lunch to express my gratitude. You won't refuse me, right? Tonks originally wanted to say that she still had to go back to the Ministry of Magic, but when she saw George's sincere and expectant eyes, and recalled the delicious food she had eaten in the morning, she hesitated again. Of course I won't refuse. Thank you for your help. It's already this late, so it's time to eat and fill our stomach. It won't be a big deal if we get back from the Ministry of Magic a little late. Seeing that Tonks agreed, George felt a little relieved. He needed Tonks to appear in his shop as much as possible so as to discourage the dark wizards in Nocturne Alley. At the same time, he also wanted to have the best possible relationship with Tonks. If Tonks could come to the store more often, he would have the opportunity to learn a few more spells from Tonks before going to Hogwarts. This is very important to his essence. It is not easy to escape from the experimental base, and it is even more difficult to resist the subsequent pursuit after escaping. Every additional magic you learn will provide you with an extra level of protection. Especially since he knew that the main body would not have much time to escape from the experimental base. Fortunately, I'm a good cook. George planned to prepare a table full of delicious food to see if he could use the food to get Tonks to come more often. As the old wizard's slave, Dora had good cooking skills after years of training, and George himself had some interest in food in his previous life. Although I am not as good as those professional chefs, my cooking skills are unanimously recognized by my friends around me. Of course, the tastes of Eastern and Western peoples for food are definitely different, but it doesn't matter. He can cook some of the most popular Oriental dishes in the UK, so the margin for error is lower. Besides, there isn't much delicious food in the UK. How does that saying go? It seems that the thinnest books in the world are British cookbooks and American history books. What kind of dish is this? It tastes very special. Why have I never eaten it anywhere else before? Sweet and sour pork. What about this? It's delicious too. Kung Pao chicken. And this? Scrambled eggs with tomatoes. After lunch, Tonks sat in a chair, touched her bulging belly and sighed. I didn't expect you could cook Chinese food. If you think it's delicious, Sister Tonks, you can come over often when you have time. I can cook a lot of delicious dishes. George said with a smile as he cleared the dishes. Tonks waved her hand. How can that be possible? I'm not that thick-skinned. In her opinion, George was already very pitiful, so how could she take advantage of him by relying on her status as an auror? That was not her style. Seeing Tonks' refusal, George probably guessed the reason, so he said seriously. Sister Tonks, don't feel embarrassed. It's actually very helpful to me if you can come over for dinner more often. This is Nocturne Alley. At this point, there is no need to beat around the bush. Tonks was not stupid. After George's reminder, she reacted immediately. In that case, fine. I'll come and have dinner with you when I'm free. But I won't eat your meal for free. I will buy all the dishes for you, so you are not allowed to refuse. Chapter 7, Diagon Alley Shopping. At night, George's consciousness returned to the Marvel main body again. It was another day of sweaty training, but nothing particularly special happened. But his intuition told him that the prison break might happen in the near future. Because he found that the group of mutant children had an extra comic book in their hands, and the name of the comic was Uncanny X-Men. In fact, he still hasn't figured out the history of the universe. This universe has X-Men and X-Men related comics, which means that mutants should have been quite famous. Then why is there a super soldier project, and why is there Captain America? All this will have to wait until he escapes from the experimental base and then looks up history to understand what exactly happened. Harry Potter World, early morning. When George took the Daily Prophet from the mailbox at the door of the store, he found an extra letter. Finally come, On the pale yellow envelope was written in emerald green ink, Nocturne Alley, Mr. George, Merton's Potion Shop. Yes, this was the admission letter that Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry had resent to him. Although he knew that since Scrimgeour and Tonks had said so, it couldn't be wrong, when he finally got the admission letter, he still couldn't calm down for a long time. That was Hogwarts, a real wizarding school, and he would be able to learn all kinds of magical skills there soon. Magic, who can resist the magic? Then let's start the big shopping. After finishing his breakfast as quickly as possible, George walked out of Merton's Potion Shop in high spirits, holding the list of books and equipment enclosed in the envelope. But as soon as he went out, his good mood was ruined by an annoying guy. "Isn't this little Dora? I heard that you were readmitted to Hogwarts. Are you going to buy school supplies?" An old wizard with a hunched back and greasy hair stood at the door of the shop opposite. He looked at George with a sinister look and greeted him. "Good morning, Mr. Borgin, just going to buy some magic books for school. Also, my name is George now." George felt uncomfortable inside, but he still responded very politely. This old wizard is not a simple person. He can be said to be the oldest dark wizard in Nocturne Alley. The Borgin and Burke antique shop he opened is the largest magic shop in Nocturne Alley. The business scope is very wide, selling and recycling those with black magic or other dangerous items, and providing confidential appraisal services for rare and ancient magical artifacts. When Voldemort was young, he was a clerk in this black-hearted antique shop. It was also thanks to the complicated relationships in this antique shop that he found and made 2 Horcruxes. The old wizard Borgin is the guy George is most worried about at the moment. If this guy gives up on attacking him, then no dark wizard in the entire Nocturne Alley would be interested in the potion shop he inherited. "What a good boy. I saw that the Auror lady seemed to have had lunch at your house yesterday." Borgin smiled, but it was a slightly creepy smile. And George smiled as well, but his smile was much brighter. "Yes, Sister Tonks likes my cooking very much. She said she would bring her colleagues and Uncle Scrimgeour to have dinner next time. That will be hard work for you." Borgin narrowed his eyes slightly. George shook his head and said innocently. "It's not hard. I really enjoy cooking. How about I cook more next time they come over, and Mr. Borgin, you can come and taste my cooking." "Well, that's not necessary." Borgin's face froze, then he turned and returned to his dark shop. Seeing Borgin leave, George muttered to himself. "If you dare to set your sights on me, I will seize your shop sooner or later and kill you, old man." After calming himself down, he set out again and entered Diagon Alley. Compared to the narrow and dark Nocturne Alley, Diagon Alley is much brighter and more spacious, filled with normal wizards bringing their children to shop and shop assistants hawking various goods. Dragon's liver, 16 sickles an ounce. Crucibles, copper, brass, pewter, silver crucibles, all models, automatic stirring, foldable. Grey owl, screech owl, grass owl, brown owl, snowy owl, we have all the pets you want. Nimbus 2001, the fastest flying broom, you deserve it. Strolling around the bustling Diagon Alley, George did not hesitate to spend money and basically bought the best tools. Although poor students have more tools, he still feels that good tools can be more efficient. Since he has money, why should he save it? A complete set of uniforms, cauldrons, telescopes, medicine bottles, scales, wands, the only thing missing is books, oh, and pets. 2 hours later, George was pushing a cart filled with various school supplies while counting the items on his list that he had not yet purchased. In fact, it didn't take much time to buy other things. Even the magic wand was bought very quickly. "I tried a few and found the one that suited me best, so I bought it." The main reason for wasting some time was because we needed to measure the sizes during the uniform purchase process. "Your owl shop, that's great, let's buy an owl." Seeing the owl shop on the street, George thought for a moment and then pushed the cart in. The little wizard has many pets to choose from, but he thinks that the most useful one is an owl, because the owls in the wizarding world are different from ordinary owls. The magic owls in the wizarding world, in addition to being smarter, also have their own positioning magic. They can find the recipient no matter where he is, unless the recipient uses related shielding magic. In addition to delivering letters, it can also deliver various things, and its strength far exceeds that of a normal owl, so it can easily deliver things weighing 10 or 20 kilograms. He is a pragmatist. Since he wants to buy a pet, he naturally wants to buy a useful one. Otherwise, it is better not to buy one. He does not have the energy to raise a pet. Welcome to your owl shop, sir, what kind of owl would you like? Seeing George come in, a clerk quickly came over to greet him. That one. After taking a quick look around the store, he quickly found the owl he liked. Following George's finger, the clerk's eyes suddenly showed a look of surprise. Are you sure you want that one? Determine. George nodded affirmatively. The clerk hesitated for a moment and then explained. I also need to remind you that it costs 10 times more than a normal owl, 100 gold galleons. The owl George was referring to was not an ordinary-sized owl, but a great eagle owl that was nearly 1 meter tall when standing. Normally, only adult wizards with special hobbies or for research purposes would spend money to buy such a large owl. He had never seen a young wizard buy one as a pet. On the one hand, it is too expensive. On the other hand, even if parents are rich, they are still worried because such a big owl is not safe. Chapter 8 Magic is not easy. Is it enough? George didn't mind. He took out a bulging cloth bag and put it on the table with a smile. He chose such a large owl for two main reasons. First, an owl of this size already has considerable attack capabilities, and if he were really in danger, it could provide him with considerable help. The second reason is its flying ability. A normal magic owl can fly with something weighing more than 10 kilograms. So for an owl this big, flying with something weighing more than 100 kilograms should not be a problem. If you encounter trouble in the future and cannot defeat it, you can also let the owl take you away. It is not only a pet, but also a flying mount. Who else can you choose but it? Since you are sure, then of course there is no problem. The clerk estimated that there were at least 400 gold jialongs in the bag. He really had the money to buy it and was not joking. He immediately and enthusiastically helped George move the eagle owl to the cart, fearing that George would change his mind. This owl eats a lot every day, and if no wizards come to buy it, we will lose money. After buying the pet, George came to the last and most important store, Flourish and Blott's bookstore. Today he not only needs to buy all the textbooks for the first grade, but also many other magic books, especially those about casting spells with hand gestures. Because if he cannot learn to cast spells with hand gestures, then his original body in the Marvel world will not be able to normally display his magical abilities until he makes a magic wand. Today is August 8 RD, and there are still 18 days until Gilderoy Lockhart's book signing at Flourish and Blott's, so there are not too many people in the bookstore, and it is relatively easy to find books. You can just ask the clerk. Gesture casting? That kind of book has been out of stock for a long time. Now everyone uses wands. Who would want to learn that backward way of casting spells? The clerk shook his head. George did not give up, but continued. I'm very interested in that backward method of spell casting. I wonder if you can help me find a copy? I can add money. To show his sincerity, he first took out 20 gold galleons. The clerk hesitated for a moment, then held up 4 fingers. We need to purchase them separately, which is very expensive. 40 pieces. No problem. George directly took out 40 gold galleons and placed them on the table. He knew that the price was definitely a rip-off, but as long as he could get the relevant magic books on gesture casting, he would be willing to pay for not only 40 but 400. 3 days. The goods will arrive within 3 days. Upon seeing this, the clerk immediately accepted the 40 gold galleons with a smile. Then I'll come and pick it up in 3 days. After another round of shopping and paying the clearly marked price in gold galleons, George pushed his full cart, hummed an unknown tune, and started back to the pharmacy in Nocturne Alley, ready to teach himself magic. On the way back, the huge and eye-catching eagle owl attracted a lot of curious glances. Be good and don't shout. When they got to the shop, they placed the eagle owl on the table in the bedroom, took out the hare they bought from the owl shop and fed it. George gave some instructions, and then began to organize the magic books they had just bought. After hearing what George said, the eagle owl actually nodded obediently. For ordinary little wizards, eagle owls are too big to be held, and they are dangerous, so they are not suitable as pets. But it was different for George. His body is stronger than that of a normal adult, and even though the eagle owl is big, it can't stop him. As for danger, the psychic ability he inherited from Professor X is only level 2, which has little effect on humans with complex minds, but has a good effect on simple animals. Not only can it communicate with animals easily, but it can also influence their behavior to a certain extent. Sometimes George thought that if he spent time studying magical creatures, his future would probably be no worse than Newt and Hagrid, and he could also become a master of magical creatures. Standard spells, elementary and magic theory, let's study these two first. He picked out the two most important books from a pile of magic books and began to study them attentively. Nowadays, the most important thing is to master practical spells. As for other subjects such as the history of magic, herbs, potions, etc., they can be put aside for the time being and wait until the crisis of Marvel itself is over. This research lasted until the evening. Sure enough, it's not that simple. Putting down the magic book and rubbing his dry eyes, George picked up the bread he bought while shopping in Diagon Alley and started to eat it. When watching the movie, it seems like it's very simple for a wizard to cast magic just by waving a wand. But when I actually started learning it, I found that it is not that easy to successfully cast a spell. This is the same principle as cooking. It seems like just a few steps, but when it actually comes to my turn, I'm at a loss. Even if the steps are the same, the taste is different. According to the magic book, if you want to successfully cast a spell, first you must have wizard blood and magic power. Otherwise, even if all the subsequent steps are correct, it will be useless. The second thing is the spell. The spells must be pronounced clearly. Different spells have different speeds, emotions, and other aspects. If they do not meet the standards, either the magic effect will be greatly weakened or it will have no effect at all. There are also very few that may produce some unexpected effects. The last step is waving the wand. The wand is not waved randomly, and the trajectories of different spells are also different. Of course, these are all for beginners. If you really understand and master a spell thoroughly, and even have studied its underlying principles and rules in great depth, it won't be difficult to cast this magic wandless and silently. A truly top-notch wizard can cast most magic instantly, without a wand and without making any noise. Softening charm, cutting charm, unlocking charm, levitation charm, locking charm, and repairing charm. Focus on learning the unlocking charm first. After finishing his bread, George turned to the page in the standard book of spells, elementary, that explained the unlocking spell. The spells in the first grade textbooks are the most basic, simplest, and easiest to learn spells, and they have basically no power. Just like the cutting spell, even if he learned it, with his level, he could at best cut a napkin or something, and he probably wouldn't even be able to break a person's skin. Instead of doing this, it is better to learn the unlocking spell first, so that the self in the Marvel main world can open the mutant ability inhibitor bound around the neck and unleash his own abilities. You can also open various high-tech doors in the experimental laboratory and escape successfully. If you have extra time, it's not too late to learn some other spells. In fact, he felt that the transfiguration charm should be more useful than the unlocking charm, especially for high-tech weapons. As long as one of the parts could be destroyed, it would be unable to function. But after thinking about it carefully, he gave up. The transfiguration spell is studied as a separate category, and it is definitely much more difficult to learn than other spells. Even a genius like Hermione couldn't learn it before school started. He didn't think he could learn it in a short time without any guidance. Even if you really learn it, the effect probably won't be that obvious, so there's no need to take the risk. Chapter 9 Hello, Harry. 3 days later, George successfully obtained a copy of A Guide to Gesture Casting from the clerk at Flourish and Blott's bookstore. 10 days later, George stood in the yard, waving his wand at a locked box and chanting, "Open the Ilaho hole." A blue beam of magic shot out from the tip of the wand and hit the box accurately. Most magic spells are accompanied by light beams of different colors when cast, especially offensive and directional magic, such as the unlocking spell, the disarming spell, and the killing curse. But there are also some magic spells that are cast silently and without any obvious signs, such as the flying spell, the repairing spell and the levitation spell. Clap! A crisp sound came from the lock, and the lock popped open automatically. It finally worked. Seeing this, George showed a satisfied smile on his face. After 10 days of sleepless research, and occasionally asking Tonks for advice, he was finally able to successfully cast the unlocking charm. And through these days of study, he also realized that he was not a so-called magic genius. A true genius is like Hermione, who has never been exposed to anything and has no one to guide her. While spending most of her time learning the history and common sense of the wizarding world, she also finds time to learn spells, and easily masters several types of magic before school starts. The more talented ones, like Snape, can create powerful spells while at school. As for Dumbledore, Grindelwald, and Voldemort, they can no longer be described as geniuses. But fortunately, he also has his own methods. He said he studied for 10 days, but in fact he could be said to have studied for 20 days. When the body here could no longer hold on and needed to rest, the main body in the Marvel world took over. The most important thing in learning magic is talent, followed by diligence. If he doesn't have enough talent, he can make up for it with diligence. The main body is in the experimental base, and there is nothing else to do except training. He has a lot of free time. He can find a stick similar to a magic wand to practice his hand feeling. Speed up your learning of spells through constant practice and understanding. Just be careful to hide or turn your back to the surveillance camera and don't be discovered. Even if you are discovered, it doesn't matter because no one in the world knows what he is doing anyway. Once his original body is free, he will learn magic even faster because he will have twice as much time as others to learn and study magic. In fact, if it is not considered cheating, being able to learn a spell in 10 days would be considered a genius among wizards. You have to know that most young wizards can't master much magic in a year, and the worst ones can only master a few. The next step is to keep practicing hand gestures until you succeed in casting a spell. Then you can consider the next spell. After experimenting several times and making sure he had fully mastered the unlocking charm, George immediately threw away his wand and began to practice the unlocking charm according to the instructions in the guide to gesture casting. After another 8 days, through continuous practice of his original body and clone, he was finally able to successfully cast the unlocking spell without using a wand. However, compared to the 1 or 2 seconds it takes to release the unlocking spell using a wand, it takes about 7 or 8 seconds to cast a spell using hand gestures instead of a wand. Even if you are proficient in it, it will probably take 5 or 6 seconds. If 2 wizards were dueling, 5 or 6 seconds would be enough for the other wizard to use his wand to cast 3 or 4 attack spells. No wonder this method of casting has been eliminated. August 21st. Today is the day Lockhart signs books at Flourish and Blots. In the morning, George was eating breakfast while looking at the date on the magic calendar and slowly calculating in his mind. He naturally had no interest in Lockhart, the great liar, but if he remembered correctly, today was also the day when Harry Potter and the Weasley family came to Diagon Alley to buy school supplies. After completing his first year, Harry returned to his aunt and uncle's house who hated him during the summer vacation because he was locked up by his uncle because of the house elf Dobby and was not allowed to go to Hogwarts. It was his good friends Ron and the Weasley brothers who secretly drove their father's magic car and took him back to live in the burrow. Then let's get in touch first. In the end, he still felt that he could take the initiative to contact her. Compared to Voldemort who will be resurrected in a few years, he feels that he can gain more from being with Harry and the others now. Many places and things in Hogwarts were basically inaccessible if he wanted to, but there was no problem when he was with Harry and the others. For example, in the restricted area of the Hogwarts library, it would be basically impossible for him to secretly read the magic books inside. But if he's with Harry, Dumbledore will turn a blind eye, and the same goes for things like the Room of Requirement. So, after breakfast, George did not continue to study the spell as usual today, but stood at the window of the pharmacy hall and observed outside. About an hour later, he saw a father and son with blonde hair walking into the Bojan Blog store opposite with elegant steps. That should be the Malfoys. It appears that Harry Potter is already in the store. They dared to bring the children into Nocturne Alley at this time. Coupled with their expensive wizard robes and the aura of superiors, it was easy to judge their identities. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, shortly after the father and son left the Bojan Blog shop, a thin boy wearing glasses and covered in dust ran out of the shop in a hurry. This is where? Harry stood in the narrow, dark alley, feeling a little creepy as he looked at the shops around him that seemed to be full of dark magic. In the window of the shop next door, there were some shrunken human heads displayed eerily, and in front of the shop 2 doors away, there was a large cage filled with huge black spiders. Turning his head to look at a dark doorway on the right, he saw 2 ragged wizards looking at him and whispering. I want to get out of here quickly. I hope I can find my way out. Today he used flow powder for the first time, but something went wrong and instead of arriving at Diagon Alley, he ended up in a scary and strange shop, and accidentally saw the illegal transaction between Malfoy and his son. Are you lost? Just as he was timidly preparing to avoid the dark doorway and grope in another direction, a steady but slightly childish voice suddenly sounded behind him. Turning around, he saw a boy who was as thin as him but had a very determined face, standing behind him holding a magic book. This is Nocturne Alley, where dark wizards gather. It's not safe for you to be here alone. Hello, my name is Harry, I came here accidentally because of the flow powder, and I wanted to go to Diagon Alley. Perhaps sensing the kindness from the little boy, Harry hurriedly explained. George smiled when he heard this. Hello, Harry, my name is George, and you probably pronounced Diagon Alley as Nocturne Alley. But it doesn't matter, they are connected, I will take you out. Chapter 10 Hermione and Hagrid. Thanks for getting me out, George. Walking out of the gloomy Nocturne Alley and arriving at the bustling Diagon Alley, Harry finally breathed a sigh of relief and immediately thanked George. He felt that if George had not sent him out just now, the weird wizards along the way might have eaten him. Harry! Harry! Just then, a little girl with thick, fluffy brown hair came running over here from the street. I'm so glad to see you. How come you're covered in dust and your glasses? Nice to see you too, Hermione. Harry adjusted his cracked glasses and a happy smile appeared on his face. It was an accident. Okay, I'll help you fix it first and restore it to its original state. Hermione drew her wand and cast her repairing charm on Harry's glasses. It was as if time had gone back, and the glasses, which were already full of cracks, were restored to their brand new state in just a few seconds. It seems I need to practice this spell properly. Harry looked at his brand new glasses and couldn't help but let out a sigh. He is not Hermione. Not only did he learn all the spells in the first-year textbook, he also taught himself many spells. He has not even fully mastered the basic spells, including the repairing charm. Like Harry, George had the same idea at this time. The repair spell is not just for repairing small things like glasses. If you practice it well, repairing collapsed buildings can be a piece of cake. In the future in the main world of Marvel, he can make a lot of money just by relying on this magic. You are. After helping Harry fix his glasses, Hermione turned her head to look at George who was standing next to Harry with a puzzled look on her face. He's a friend I just met, George, and this is Hermione Granger. Harry quickly introduced the two. George also stretched out his hand and smiled. Hello, beautiful Miss Granger. Hello, George. When Hermione heard George praising her beauty, her liking for George increased immediately, and she happily reached out and shook hands with George. It was the first time that someone, other than her parents, complimented her on her beauty, and many people praised her for her intelligence. Harry, now that your friend is here, I should go back as well. See you at Hogwarts. After shaking hands with Hermione, George didn't stay for long, just waved and walked into Nocturne Alley. It was the first time they met, so it was enough to just get to know each other. There was no need to be too aggressive, as that would seem too deliberate. Besides, his time was precious, and he had to continue studying magic. Most importantly, he had no intention of stopping Malfoy from secretly slipping Voldemort's diary to Ginny. Voldemort's diary contains Voldemort's soul, which can bewitch people's hearts. Even if he has psychic powers, he is not sure he can resist it, so he does not intend to touch it or take it for himself. There was no need to try to stop it. After all, with Dumbledore around, it would only become a test for Harry and no young wizard would actually get hurt. He also wanted to use this incident to see if he could gain some benefits. He looks nice, why haven't I seen him in school before? Hermione looked at George's back as he left, a hint of confusion in her tone. George didn't look older than her. He was either in the same grade or one grade higher than her. She must have seen him before. Harry laughed when he heard that, because he's only in his first year at Hogwarts this year, of course you haven't seen him. So he's younger than us, so how did you know each other? Hermione asked curiously as she took Harry towards Flourish and Blots. Harry also talked about his experience just now. On the other side, when George returned to the door of the shop, he unexpectedly saw a very burly figure standing at the door of his shop looking around. In fact, saying that he is burly is not an adequate description, because his height has exceeded the limits of a normal human being. After a rough estimate, he estimated that she was about 3.5 meters tall. He might not be able to touch her waist even if he walked closer and stretched out his hand. It felt very oppressive. Why is this guy in front of my store? From the figure and dress, George guessed her identity at a glance. Rubeus Hagrid, the keykeeper, gamekeeper and master of magical zoology at Hogwarts, is a man of both wizard and giant blood. Thinking of Hagrid's life experience, he couldn't help but give a thumbs up to Hagrid's father, Mr. Hagrid. What a tough guy. You have to know that the normal height of giants is about 7 or 8 meters. Mr. Hagrid, as a male wizard of normal height, can actually mate with female giants and even reproduce offspring. One has to admire his amazing skills. Sir, what can I do for you? George stepped forward and asked. Hagrid turned and looked down at George. And found that it was a thin little wizard. He immediately replied in a gentle tone. I'm looking for a medicine to repel flesh-eating slugs. I heard that only this potion shop has it, but unfortunately it seems to be closed. Although his voice was gentle, due to his huge size, to George it sounded like a normal person's roar. Mr. Merton, the owner of this potion shop, died accidentally while refining potions some time ago. I am now in charge. I know the potion you mentioned and can find it for you. George took out the key and opened the door, then quickly went to the counter and took out a bottle of potion. Although Dora doesn't know how to make potions, she knows a lot about herbology and the functions of all the potions in the store because she has to introduce and attract customers. The repellent is very effective against cabbage caterpillars and cabbage heartworms, in addition to carnivorous slugs. Oh, thank you, little boss. Hagrid took the potion with some surprise, and a satisfied smile immediately appeared on his face. How much is it? Cheng Hui, 14th XIK. George smiled and held out his hand. It's much cheaper than I expected. From the pocket of his huge moleskin coat, Hagrid pulled a handful of silver sickles, counted out 14, and put them in George's hand. He thought that this rare potion would cost at least 2 gold galleons. Because I'm going to Hogwarts soon, I'm in a good mood, so I gave you half the price. George put 14 silver sickles into the box on the counter and said happily on purpose. Since he can communicate with animals using telepathic powers and has the potential to become a master of magical animals, this talent naturally should not be wasted. Get along well with Hagrid and learn some extra knowledge about magical creatures. It is a good choice whether to make money or raise some magical animals to increase your strength. So after recognizing Hagrid, he wanted to make friends with him. Hagrid is enthusiastic, kind, and honest. He isn't too cunning, so it's not difficult for him to have a good relationship with him. Sure enough, after hearing his words, Hagrid was obviously stunned for a moment, and his attitude instantly became much closer. He looked at George's face carefully and smiled. So you're a new student this year. I'm Rubius Hagrid, the gamekeeper at Hogwarts. You can come see me when you're free after school. I'll make you some rock cakes. Chapter 11, Counterattack, Escape from the Base. 5 days later, at the Genetic Modification Institute in Mexico City. Sander Rice couldn't help laughing as he looked at the young version of Wolverine X-24 that he had copied using Wolverine genes. Finally, I have succeeded in my research. I have a Wolverine that completely obeys my orders. In the future, the whole world will submit to me. His father, Dale Rice, was one of the scientists who performed the adamantium transplant surgery on Logan, and was killed when Logan escaped from the laboratory. From that moment on, he was determined to kill all uncontrolled and dangerous mutants and create mutant soldiers who would obey his orders completely. Later, he founded Yokley Genetics and used the food and beverage companies he controlled to spread the M43 virus they developed to the public on a large scale. This virus will not affect humans, but it will curb the abilities of existing mutants and eliminate genetic mutations in future generations of humans. After more than 20 years of hard work, there will finally be no new mutants born in this world. Donald, since those test subjects are unwilling to obey orders, just get rid of them. Turning around, Dr. Rice gave cold instructions to a man whose right hand was completely replaced by a robotic arm. His original plan was to use the mutant genes collected earlier to breed a new group of mutant children through surrogate mothers in Mexico, and then sell them to other organizations as weapons. However, after this period of experimentation, it was discovered that as these children grew up, they actually developed ideas of their own that could not be fully controlled, and some even attempted to escape. So now that he has developed mutant clones that are completely under his control, he naturally no longer needs those failed products. He also felt that maybe it was not just about selling weapons. As long as he could steadily replicate a large number of mutants who obeyed his orders, he could completely rule the entire world. Are we going to deal with number 757 as well? Donald was not surprised by Dr. Rice's proposal. Dr. Rice hesitated for 2 seconds and then nodded. Get rid of it. Now that the cloning technology is mature, in addition to cloning Wolverine in large quantities, perhaps we can also clone Professor X and Magneto. There is no need to waste resources on inferior experimental products. Learn. Donald drew the pistol from his waist, turned around and left the experimental base. On the other side, George, who was practicing hand gestures in his room, looked at the clock hanging on the wall, his expression gradually becoming solemn. No, is it about to start? Normally at this time, someone should have come to take him for training. It looks like it's starting. At this moment, the door of his room was suddenly opened, and two familiar figures walked in. The leader was the instructor who had been training him during this period. I told you this guy is a loser. It's just a waste of my time to train him for so long. Now I have to get rid of him. The instructor came in and looked at George with disgust, then ordered the men holding submachine guns behind him. Deal with it, then throw the body into the laboratory's incinerator and burn it together with the other small pieces of trash. Yes, Captain. The man raised his submachine gun, aimed at George and pulled the bolt. But just as he was about to pull the trigger, he heard Subject 757 suddenly say something incomprehensible. Open the Allaho hole. With a click sound, the ability inhibitor on the neck of subject number 757 was automatically detached. Then he felt a chill on his neck and his consciousness gradually became blurred. It turned out that George started to cast a spell as soon as he saw the two people appear, but because the casting action was very small, the two people on the opposite side did not take it seriously. The ability inhibitor was released, and the magnetic control was fully erupted. The dagger that he had placed at the door in advance flew up instantly and directly wiped the guard's neck, temporarily resolving the crisis. Stab! The instructor drew out the dagger from his waist and deflected the dagger that was attacking from behind, and cold sweat instantly broke out on his forehead. How could this be? If he hadn't reacted in time, he would have suffered the same fate as his men. The moment he saw the ability suppressor of Subject 757 fall off, he, who had been on the brink of life and death for many years, immediately became alert and drew out the dagger from his waist at the first opportunity. However, if Subject 757 attacked him first, he would probably not have had time to react. You've hidden your abilities and strength. In his impression, Subject 757's speed and strength in controlling the dagger were not strong, and he could usually deflect it easily. But just now, although he successfully deflected the dagger, his wrist was slightly painful due to the powerful force of the dagger. Dead people don't need to know that much. George controlled the dagger and destroyed the surveillance in the room with a swish. Then he attacked the instructor who could easily defeat him like a storm. Normally he does have hidden strength, but it would never be as strong as it is now. The main reason is that the shared wizard bloodline has an unexpected bonus to his mutant abilities. Because the dagger was too fast, the angle was too tricky, and the power was also very strong, the instructor was injured after just a few rounds. He wanted to escape, wanted to get close to George for close combat, but George didn't give him any chance at all, so he could only defend himself as much as possible, hoping that some of his companions would notice the abnormality here and come to rescue him. However, George knew that time was precious for escape, so there was no point in wasting it. Here comes the gun. He controlled the dagger to attack while hooking his finger at the dead guard over there, and the submachine gun in the guard's hand immediately flew into his hand. Goodbye, instructor. Pointing the submachine gun at the instructor who was still trying to resist the dagger, George pulled the trigger without hesitation. He is not a rigid person. He has a gun but doesn't want to use it. He has to use it to the best of his ability. Da-da-da-da-da. Oh, God! The instructor's eyes widened in horror when he saw this, and he was beaten to a pulp before he could finish half of his words. George waved his hand to retrieve his own dagger, and also took back the instructor's dagger. Then he took the submachine gun, walked out of the room where he was imprisoned, and sneaked out of the laboratory. He manipulated the dagger to destroy all surveillance that might discover him along the way, as well as all the guards he encountered. Soon he heard intense gunfire and screams. It is obvious that this time it is not just him who needs to be dealt with, but all the mutant children. Perhaps it was because of this that when problems arose on his side, no guards arrived in time. Compared to him, those mutant kids caused more chaos. This is also the reason why he has not been in a hurry to escape, but waited until today to escape. If he escaped alone, in this experimental base full of surveillance cameras, he would probably be surrounded by a large number of guards after just a few steps. Faced with the siege of large numbers of guns, he is not Magneto and cannot stop it at all. Chapter 12, Choice, to save or not to save. Call out. Controlling two daggers, George sneakily killed two guards by the neck and came to a fork in the road. According to his understanding and the information he had overheard during this period, the cafeteria was on the right side of the fork in the road. And beyond the cafeteria was the room where the mutant children were imprisoned. On the left was the road leading outside the laboratory. If he walked to the left at this time, with his current strength, he would most likely be able to sneak out safely and then get a car to escape. Once you drive to a crowded area in the city, the sky is high and the birds fly freely. With that group of mutant children attracting fire, there probably won't be many people coming to hunt him down later. What? Just as he was about to step to the left of this fork in the road, a miserable cry came from deep in the right fork. It was a childish voice, the voice of a child. The scream made George put his raised foot down again. Alas, it seems that I still can't be so rational and cruel after all. After hesitating for a moment, he turned and walked to the right. There were a total of 50 mutant children in the entire experimental base, and according to what he saw in the movie, in the end only less than 20 of them escaped, including X-23 little wolf girl. In other words, more than 30 mutant children died in this escape. George thinks he is not a good person, but not a bad person either. He is just a normal person with an average moral level. Reason told him that in the current situation, the safest thing to do was to let the group of children attract fire while he escaped quietly. But humans are not machines, how can they be so rational? If the people screaming just now were a group of adults, then he would have been cruel and ignored them, since they had no relatives or friends anyway. But after all, they were all poor kids, and he could see them every day. Although he had never talked to them, he knew them all. But he also thought very clearly. If he could save the person, he would save him. If he couldn't save him, he would run away. He still had to put his own life first. Lady, we're, Ellie. In the cafeteria, Gabriella looked at the 3 children who were shot for stopping the pursuers, and tears welled up in her eyes again. After realizing that the purpose of this genetic modification research institute was not to research a cure for cancer but to train mutant killers, she and several equally kind-hearted colleagues decided to secretly take these poor children away. However, before the plan was implemented, the top management of the laboratory had already decided to execute these children collectively. For this reason, they had to escape early, but even though the children had various magical abilities, they were no match for the experienced guards armed with cold guns. Just by escaping to the cafeteria, several of her colleagues were killed for providing cover, and more than a dozen of the 50 children were also killed. If they wanted to really escape later, even more people would probably die. Laura. At this time, seeing that X-23, the strongest among the children, was also caught by his limbs and fixed in midair after killing 6 people in a row, Gabriella pulled out the submachine gun from the body of the guard next to her and said to the children behind her. You go to the door and Aunt Isa will take you to your destination. Isa is the last colleague still alive. She is usually responsible for driving a large truck to transport daily necessities purchased from the city to the base. After receiving their notification, we drove the car to the door to meet them. What about you and Laura? The slightly older mutant boy in the lead showed a worried look on his face. Although they had been living in the laboratory and had no common sense, they were not stupid. Ricardo, you are the oldest among them. I leave them all to you. Take them to the destination and wait for me there. I will definitely bring Laura to find you. Gabriella gently instructed the boy, then fired wildly at the opposite side with a submachine gun, trying to create a chance for the children to escape. Her shooting skills were not good, but this burst of random shooting also made the guards who were controlling the little wolf girl panic, causing one of the little wolf girl's feet to break free from the restraints. She fiercely inserted the adamantium wolf claw on that foot into the eye of a guard, temporarily breaking free from the restraints. However, it was obvious that more guards had rushed over to the other side of the passage. Seeing this, Ricardo gritted his teeth and ran to the back corridor with these non-blood-related brothers and sisters. But just after escaping from the cafeteria, he was stopped by 4 armed guards in the corridor. Let's go together. Although they were terrified, they still mustered up their courage and planned to fight to the death with the 4 guards in order to escape. Hey! Hey! However, before they could activate their abilities, 2 of the guards suddenly fell to the ground with blood spurting from their necks. The remaining 2 guards turned around hurriedly, but were greeted by 2 bullets. Are you guys okay? George dealt with the 4 guards and looked at the dazed children in front of him, and he breathed a sigh of relief. There were still 34 children alive, so he arrived in time. Number 757. When Ricardo found out that the one who saved them was the mutant number 757 who never spoke, he was stunned for a moment, but then he immediately said anxiously. Aunt Gabriella and Laura are still in the cafeteria. I have cleared out the guards at the back. You continue to flee and I will go rescue them. George didn't hesitate. After giving instructions, he threw away the spent submachine gun in his hand, replaced it with the 2 guns of the guards on the ground, and rushed to the cafeteria. So cruel. As soon as he rushed into the cafeteria, he saw the little wolf girl riding on the neck of a guard and punching his head, drying out his brains. That posture frightened the besieging guards. But after all, he was too thin and was suppressed by bullets from the guards who reacted quickly. Although he could not be killed due to his self-healing ability, he was still shot down from the air and retreated repeatedly. Gabriella, who was standing next to her, had run out of bullets and was pinned down behind a bunker, so she was of no help at all. Fake. At this moment, it is obviously no longer possible to kill the enemy by just controlling the dagger. He does not have the self-healing ability to be fearless against so many guns of the enemy. If he cannot kill all the enemies as quickly as possible, what awaits him is ruthless firepower. So George set up 2 submachine guns, attached all his control over magnetism to the bullets in the magazines, and started firing like crazy. After being fired, the bullets did not fly along their original trajectories, but were transformed into arcs by magnetic force and shot towards the vital positions of the guards as much as possible. The firing speed of a submachine gun is close to the accuracy of a sniper rifle, and this is the real reason why he dared to come and help. Chapter 13 George's Final Gift. Ever since he knew that his mutant limit was only level 2, he had been thinking about how to use his abilities to the maximum extent. He cannot make countless bullets or even missiles stop and rebound like Magneto, nor can he lift thousands or tens of thousands of tons of objects, nor can he use magnetism to fly and change the Earth's magnetic field. However, he felt that the way the instructors at the experimental base trained him to control a dagger to kill people was too low. It is better to use a needle than a dagger. At least the quantity and speed can be controlled much faster. Although the power is smaller, it should be effective in attacking vital points such as the 7 orifices. Of course, after much thought, he believed that if he wanted to maximize the power of magnetism, he still had to use firearms. The bullets fired from guns, both in speed and damage, are much stronger than any sharp weapon he controls. As long as he slightly affects the trajectory of the bullet, he can become a sharpshooter beyond human limits. It is still a submachine gun now, but if its capabilities become stronger in the future and it can control the trajectory of bullets from a heavy machine gun, that would be really amazing. He is truly a one-man army that can hold off 10,000. He can deal with all the guards in the entire base by himself. Come on! After most of the 2 magazines were used up, all the guards in the cafeteria had fallen to the ground. George waved at the stunned Gabriella and the puzzled little wolf girl. Laura, let's go! Gabriella came to her senses and quickly stepped forward, pulling the little wolf girl towards George. Of course she knew Subject 757, but unlike other mutant children, this directly generated adult mutant did not need to be cared for by nurses like them, but was instead taken care of by special personnel. But since the other party is willing to help, he is definitely not an enemy. Running all the way with Gabriella and the little wolf girl, they soon caught up with the children in front. However, George did not dare to be careless because he knew that the guards of this experimental base were far more than that. It's just that the other party didn't expect the current situation to occur, and it took a while for them to fully react. And it is not ruled out that the other side has some more lethal and advanced weapons. Don't be fooled by how powerful and ruthless he looked just now. He killed a group of guards in the blink of an eye with 2 submachine guns. That was mainly because the little wolf girl attracted the fire and launched a sneak attack. To be honest, given his current situation, it would be a big trouble if he encountered a sniper. Some specially made Barrett heavy sniper rifles use high-penetration bullets that can penetrate a thick concrete wall with one shot. If you snipe him from a long distance, his magnetic force will not be able to deflect at all, and he may be killed before he even has time to react. So now is not the time to slack off. Fortunately, there were no accidents on the rest of the journey. He did not encounter the sniper he was worried about, nor did he encounter the clone of Wolverine. He successfully arrived outside the experimental base. Do you know where the most important laboratories and data rooms in this base are located? After carrying the children onto the truck, George did not get on the truck immediately, but asked Gabriella. Although Gabriella was a little confused, she quickly pointed out 2 directions. There and there. Very good, let us give them some gifts before we leave. George opened the bag on his back and took out a dozen grenades collected from the bodies of the guards. In fact, there were not only grenades in his bag, but also some cash that he had looted so that he would not be penniless when he got out. I hope you like it. He used his ability to control the grenades, accurately shooting them at the two locations pointed out by Gabriella, and then pulled the fuses simultaneously in mid-air. A moment later, a violent explosion sounded, and the two locations in the experimental base instantly turned into a sea of fire. Let's go. Seeing that his goal had been achieved, George got into the car with Gabriella, who opened her mouth wide. His purpose for doing this was simple. If he could kill the top executives of the experimental base, that would be the best. If not, he could also create chaos, destroy those important research materials, and slow down the other party's pursuit. And his goal was indeed achieved. An hour later, Dr. Rice, who was covered in dust, slapped Commander Donald in the face and shouted angrily. You useless piece of shit! I asked you to deal with that garbage, but you ended up in such a mess. Most of the people escaped, and you destroyed so much of my important data. If X-24 wasn't fine, I would have thrown you into the crematorium right now. Boss, it was my mistake. I didn't expect those nurses would actually help them escape. Donald didn't care about the pain on his face at all, he just lowered his head respectfully. Dr. Rice took a deep breath, calmed down and ordered. Things have already happened. I don't want to hear your explanation. I want you to catch those escaped mutant children as quickly as possible and deal with them. Don't let them be discovered by other organizations. As one of the world's most famous companies that is secretly connected with many terrorist organizations, he understands that this world is not a simple one, especially with the existence of a behemoth called SHIELD. If SHIELD discovers the existence of mutants, they will definitely find him based on the mutants' clues, and then he will be in trouble. He didn't want to go against SHIELD before he had cloned mutants in large numbers. Report to me anytime if anything happens. I'll bring X-24 to help if necessary. I can also test the actual combat effectiveness of X-24. Yes, boss. Donald nodded, then left the laboratory which was half destroyed in the bombing and went to gather his men. What were the results of the investigation? Commander, according to our investigation, it seems that Subject 757 was responsible. According to... A captain quickly repeated the results of the investigation. Donald frowned after hearing this. It's actually him. How can a mere level 2 mutant have such strength? He had been in command of all the previous battles, so he naturally knew what the situation was. Although those mutant children escaped control with the help of several nurses, he quickly dispatched more people to help stabilize the situation. If nothing unexpected happened, he should be able to stop all the mutant children who escaped in the cafeteria. However, for some reason, after a burst of gunfire, all his men fell silent. He was just about to take more men to pursue, but was startled by the explosion and hurried back immediately. There was no way out. There was an explosion location right near the boss laboratory, and he didn't dare not go back. That should be correct. Captain Biss, who was in charge of dealing with Subject 757, was killed. Although he destroyed all surveillance cameras along the way, our trace analysis experts still found traces of him going to the cafeteria. But from analyzing the bodies of those who were killed, except for a few who died from daggers, most of them were shot, and basically every shot was fatal. The squad leader explained. Sharpshooter, but he doesn't seem to have this ability. Donald frowned and looked puzzled. Mutants with the potential to be sharpshooters usually have either supervision or special motion capture and reaction abilities, etc. However, as far as he knows, Subject 757 has telepathic abilities and the ability to control magnetism. Maybe I should ask the boss about this kind of thing. He only knows how to command operations, and research on mutant abilities is the boss's business. But thinking that the boss was still angry, I gave up. Anyway, he felt that even if he was a sharpshooter, without special training, he would be nothing. Chapter 14 The Turn of Things. What are your plans, where are you going? Sitting in the truck, George asked Nurse Gabriella and the fat female driver Isa. In the movie, Gabriella sent the mutant children to the border of North Dakota, but it was not really because she read the comics and thought that it was the last refuge for mutants. She is not a child, how could she possibly believe what is in the comics? In addition, Rikdu, the eldest of the mutant children, also used radio to communicate with unknown forces. Because of George's mutant identity and the help he just provided, Gabriella already had a foundation of trust in George and did not hide anything from him at this time. We have to get to the North Dakota border by 5 o'clock next Friday and then cross the border to Canada. Why go to Canada, and why at that time? George had a look of confusion on his face. Gabriella explained. We have checked the relevant information and found that Canada was the most friendly country to mutants before they disappeared, so we took the initiative to contact the Canadian government before we decided to help the children escape. They are also willing to accept these children, but do not want to cause trouble. So we have to get to the border by 5 o'clock next Friday, and then they will try to interfere with the satellites in that area and then meet us on the other side of the border. It turned out to be the Canadian government. George suddenly realized that he had watched the X-Men series, so he knew the general situation, but he didn't know some specific details. He really didn't know whether the Canadian government was close to mutants, or not so hostile to mutants. However, he then frowned again because he personally did not have much trust in the Canadian government. The government is not an individual and has many things to consider. Moreover, a new leader may lead to a new stance. Even if the Canadian government was not averse to mutants in the past, what about now? Will these mutant children become new experimental subjects after they pass away? He would definitely not choose something without any guarantee. So, he also told Gabriella his opinion. Gabriella was obviously surprised that George, a mutant who had never left the experimental base, could have such long-term considerations. However, her answer was also helpless. There is no other way. Even though we know there may be danger, we have no choice because we really can't think of a better way. Working in this cruel experimental base, how could they not understand the ugliness of human nature and not worry that the children would enter another hell after arriving there? But they have no choice, because they are a group of powerless people at the lowest level of society, but the kindness in their hearts has not yet been extinguished. If the children stayed in this experimental base, they would surely die, but if they went to Canada, there might still be some hope. Yes, sometimes life is so helpless. George also sighed when he heard this. In his previous life, he was also at the bottom of society. He had experienced many helpless choices, but they were not as cruel as this one. But after thinking about it carefully, he didn't have any good solution, as he was unfamiliar with this world. But he would not leave his fate in the hands of the Canadian government. If he sent these children across the border, he would leave and hide. Taking the risk to save these children is already the most humane thing to do. Going to Canada and being restricted by the Canadian government in order to protect these children is impossible. Escorting them to the border was already his limit. At this moment, he had obviously forgotten the somewhat selfish reason he had given himself at the fork in the road. We're in Juarez now. We'll buy some necessary supplies and go directly to the border, then enter New Mexico and head north to North Dakota. If everything goes well, it will only take 2 days. After 2 hours of high-speed driving, the truck entered the city of Biles in northeastern Mexico, and George also stuck his head out to look outside. He had heard of this city in his previous life, but it didn't have a good reputation. Biles is located on the northeastern border of Mexico, on the south bank of the Grande River, across the river from El Paso, USA. It is known as one of the most violent cities in the world. At its craziest time, nearly 15,000 people were killed in crimes in 6 years. This city has the largest number of flour dealers in Mexico and is the most important source of flour for the United States. Breaking news: Stark Group CEO, the famous playboy Tony Stark, was kidnapped in Kunar Province, Afghanistan today, and his whereabouts are still unknown. The truck stopped in front of a large supermarket. When Gabriella and Isa went to buy daily necessities, George, who stayed behind, was suddenly attracted by the news broadcast on the TV in front of the supermarket. The event that gave birth to Iron Man. His body shook, and something suddenly occurred to him. A smile gradually appeared on his face. Maybe there will be a new turn of events. Recalling all the Marvel movies he had watched in his previous life and thinking about it carefully, he came up with a new idea in his mind. For him, instead of trusting the character of the government, it is better to trust the character of Tony Stark. Although this guy is a little fickle and a little proud, his character is still fine. Moreover, as one of the largest capitalists in the United States, even the government can't do anything to him. If he doesn't want to hand over the Iron Man suit, he won't have to. Just like Professor X in the past, the reason why he could open a mutant school in New York was not only because the X-Men were powerful, but more importantly, Professor X himself was a wealthy man and his family was also a well-known capitalist. If they can get the protection of Tony Stark, these mutant children will not only be able to escape from many troubles, but may also be able to enjoy normal education in life. And he can also have a safe place to study magic. As for being associated with Tony Stark, whether he would be involved in some subsequent events and face greater danger. There is actually no way to deal with this kind of thing. We can only solve the current troubles first, gain a relatively safe period of time to improve our strength as much as possible. Only when we become strong can we succeed. Besides, he also has his own ideas about whether or not to participate in major events in the future. If this was the movie universe, he would definitely hide far away. Even if Thanos snapped his fingers, he would be rescued in the end anyway. There was no need for him to participate. Wouldn't it be better to just study magic? But this is not a movie universe, but an unknown Marvel universe mixed with mutants, so it's hard to say. Because it is very likely that due to some major event, the entire Earth will be destroyed, and since he lives on this planet, he naturally cannot escape. Instead of leaving your destiny to those superheroes, it is better to leave it to yourself. Maybe if he lends a hand at a critical moment, they can get through those major events and keep the Earth and themselves safe. So contact is inevitable sooner or later. Now, the most important thing is how to rescue Tony Stark and make him owe me a favor. George stroked his chin and fell into deep thought. If they want Tony Stark, the top billionaire, to owe them a favor and help them sincerely, the only way is to do him a favor by saving their lives. But relying on him and his current strength, how could he rescue Tony Stark? He didn't even know the other party's exact location. He only knew that he seemed to be in a cave in the desert. Chapter 15, Searching for Wolverine. Can I borrow your cell phone, please? The truck started again and George immediately asked Gabriella. Before thinking about how to save Tony Stark, he must have a good understanding of the history and relevant circumstances of this world in order to make more accurate judgments and more complete plans. In this era, the fastest way is naturally to use the mobile phone to surf the internet to find out. Of course, give it. Without thinking, Gabriella pulled her cell phone out of her pocket and handed it to George. After getting the phone, George began to search the internet for the information he wanted to know. He did not return the phone to Gabriella until the truck entered the Mexican border and the sky gradually darkened. So that's it. In fact, the history of this universe is not much different from that of the movie universe, except that there are more mutant elements. According to online news reports, mutants became truly known to the public in 1973. The mutant Mystique tried to assassinate Trask, but was eventually stopped. Mystique became a hero of the mutants, and humans began to gradually accept the existence of mutants. In 1977, Quicksilver broke 8 world records in sports competitions, and the sports world began to ban mutants from participating in professional sports competitions. This conflicts with the movie universe, because according to the movie universe, Quicksilver was not born that year. In the movie universe, Quicksilver and Wanda were both born in 1990. This also reminded him that in the future, many things cannot be dealt with completely according to the plots of the movies he has watched. After that, the superhero organization X-Men was sought after by the public, and a large number of extended comics about X-Men appeared. The one in the hands of Little Wolf and the others is one of them. Many of the stories in it are adapted from real events of the X-Men, but there are also a lot of fictional ones, such as the so-called Garden of Eden. In 1983, the Apocalypse incident occurred, and soon after it ended, the Westchester incident broke out. Professor X suffered a sudden epilepsy, and his brain went out of control and killed all the X-Men except Wolverine, as well as the mutant students in the school, and more than innocent humans in the surrounding area. Since then, Professor X has been listed as a weapon of mass destruction by the US government and is wanted, and mutants have begun to disappear. Now, more than 20 years later, most humans have forgotten the existence of mutants, and even many of the new generation simply regard them as fake characters in comics. For some reason, governments around the world have been downplaying the history of the existence of mutants, as if they want to use this to prove that the government is humanity's greatest reliance, not some mutant superhero. Before 1973, there was almost no news about the existence of mutants. It was not until 1943 that Steve Rogers became Captain America through the super soldier serum and defeated Hydra. It is probably because at that time Wolverine and Sabretooth were just ordinary soldiers with little fame, Professor X and Magneto were still children, and the Hellfire Club was also hiding in the dark. Have you ever thought about going to find Wolverine and Professor X who might still be around? By this time, George already had a rough plan in mind. Although the history of this universe had many conflicts with what he knew, some things had not changed in general. He could not rely entirely on the known information, but he could not completely give up his advantages in this area. At least the original reason why Tony Stark was kidnapped was most likely Obadiah Stane, who wanted to kill Tony Stark and monopolize the Stark Group. However, his psychic ability was not enough to read the information about the 10 rings from Obadiah Stane and find the location where Tony Stark was imprisoned, so Professor X was needed to take action. Professor X's brain sometimes gets out of control due to epilepsy, but with the help of medication, he has gotten much better and is still conscious most of the time. Maybe he won't be as powerful as before, but he should still be able to read memories with his mind. After all, he could still chat with the little wolf girl from a distance from time to time. With Wolverine as a human shield and his abilities, it is not difficult to rescue Tony Stark. Although Wolverine is old, he is not something that ordinary terrorists can stop when he is serious. Moreover, when Gabriella escaped, she brought a lot of drugs that can temporarily enhance the abilities of mutants, allowing Wolverine to recover some strength. And most importantly, these two people have rich experience in planning and executing missions, which is something he, Gabriella and this group of mutant children do not have. To be honest, he himself was completely in the dark in this foreign country, even worse than Gabriella. I have thought about it. We have been looking for information about them before, but we only heard that there was a man who looked like Wolverine working as a driver in El Paso, and there were no other clues. And we thought that Professor X was also a wanted criminal and might not be able to help us. Gabriella replied helplessly. George nodded when he heard this. In some ways, Gabriella's idea was not wrong. Wolverine and his men were indeed in a difficult situation. I have a plan now. If it succeeds, then in the future children may not need to be controlled by anyone and can live like normal people. Without hiding anything, he told Gabriella his entire plan. His idea was simple. If Gabriella agreed, he would be willing to spend more time and effort to help, as an investment for the future. If Gabriella disagrees, he will not force her. He is not a pushover. After sending the children to their destination, he will leave alone to complete the plan and settle down in New York. Besides, his choice may not be the best for the children. They might live a better life in Canada. After hearing George's plan, Gabriella fell into deep thought. At this moment, she was very conflicted, because to be honest, she had no confidence in the Canadian government. As a Mexican who grew up in Juarez, it was difficult for her to have much confidence in the government. But the plan George mentioned is also very risky. If George and his team failed to rescue Tony Stark in the end and they missed the time agreed with the Canadian government, the children would definitely be captured by the people in the experimental base and brutally killed. Also, would Wolverine and Professor X be willing to help? Seeing the confusion in Gabriella's heart, George added. If Wolverine and Professor X are unwilling to help, or if we are not back by 5 o'clock on Friday, you will cross the border to Canada as planned. Today is Saturday, and there are 6 days left until next Friday. If everything goes well, 6 days will be enough for them to rescue Tony Stark. Well, George, thank you so much. Gabriella nodded gratefully. In fact, George could have left on his own and there was no need to help them. With George's abilities and the intelligence he showed, it was not difficult for him to escape from the laboratory's pursuit. But he chose to stay and help them, and to find a better way for them to survive. No need. I am just like them. I am also an experiment in the experimental base. I am also their older brother. George exclaimed with a smile. In fact, according to the time of creation, you should be considered the youngest among them. Gabriella seemed to have thought of something and suddenly laughed. George couldn't help but smile when he heard this. That's right, it has been less than a year since this body of his was created, so he is indeed the youngest mutant in the laboratory. Chapter 16 Dusk Wolf's Concerns. El Paso County, Texas, early morning. Logan, who had just delivered his last customer, was sleeping tiredly in his rented stretched limousine, but was awakened by the noisy sound outside. What the hell? After cursing angrily, he had to get up with difficulty and push open the car door. He often encountered this kind of thing. It must be those gangsters who smuggled in from Mexico. They took a fancy to his luxury car and wanted to remove the wheels and sell them for money. However, he couldn't let those thugs succeed at this time, because he still had to make money from this rented car, and he needed money now. The professor needs money to buy medicine to maintain his illness, and he has been saving money to buy a yacht and take the professor to live in the safety of the sea. After living for so many years and experiencing the death of good friends and loved ones, he is actually tired of his own life. His only wish now is to give Charles, his only old friend who once saved him and is still alive, a decent life in his later years. If he let these thugs take off the wheels, he would not only have to pay compensation to the rental company, but he would also not be able to continue to maintain this stable job. Hey, these nuts are all chrome-plated, and you broke them all. You guys, get out of here. Holding the car door, Logan tried to persuade these thugs to leave without using violence, but the result was obviously not what he wanted. When the gangsters saw the car owner appear, they did not run away immediately. Instead, they raised their hands and shot Logan, and then continued to remove the wheels. Killing seems to be as easy for them as eating and drinking. Logan's self-healing ability is no longer as good as before due to the toxins in the adamantium, but such injuries are not enough to kill him. He stood up and slowly released his wolf claws, then walked forward and started fighting with the thugs. However, due to his aging body and lack of sufficient rest, he was soon knocked to the ground by 6 thugs. He could only protect his head with his hands and wait for the right opportunity to fight back. George, can he really help us now? Gabriella asked worriedly on the truck. They changed the route to El Paso County, and after 4 hours of searching, they finally found the trace of Wolverine Logan, but the current situation made her lose some confidence. George smiled and nodded. Of course, and it can be of great help. Don't look at Wolverine's current state. If he really gets ruthless, no matter how many people come, they will not be his match. If a way to remove the adamantium toxin can be found in the future, Wolverine's body will be restored to its most youthful state. You should know that Apocalypse, who also gained the ability to heal himself, has lived for thousands of years without any aging. Wait for me here. I'll go talk to him first. George pushed open the car door, jumped down, and used his ability to control 2 daggers to slash at the necks of those thugs. Naturally, he would not have any good thoughts towards this kind of gangster who had no moral bottom line and killed innocent people at will, and he would aim at the vital points when he attacked. Swish, swish, swish. There were several consecutive sounds of tracheas being cut by sharp blades. The thugs who were surrounding and kicking Wolverine instantly covered their necks and fell down in disbelief. Wolverine noticed the abnormality and loosened his arms, also looking surprised. At this moment, a hand reached out to him. Are you okay, Wolverine Logan? Friend, you may have recognized the wrong person. I am not Wolverine, but thank you for your help. Logan didn't reach out, but slowly stood up by himself. George didn't care, he took back his hand and continued. My name is George, I'm a mutant, and we have 35 mutant children here. We need your and the professor's help. Mutants? Mutants disappeared long ago. There are no mutants in this world anymore, and there is no Wolverine or Professor. Wolverine shook his head and squatted down with some difficulty, trying to pick up the nuts scattered on the ground and restore the car's tires. George stretched out his hand and waved it. The scattered nuts on the ground instantly floated up and fell into his hands. There are indeed not many naturally occurring mutants left, but there are still many mutants created through artificial experiments. For example, I am a mutant synthesized using the genes of the Professor and Magneto. Who are you? When Wolverine saw the nut floating in the air, a look of vigilance appeared in his eyes, and he stretched out his claws again, although one of them was stuck in the middle. George paused when he saw this, then waved in the direction of a truck parked on the side of the road not far away. A moment later, Gabriella, along with the little wolf girl and 35 other mutant children, slowly walked over. Show Mr. Logan what you are capable of. The little wolf girl stretched out her adamantium wolf claws, Ricto made a wall of earth rise from the ground, and the other children also used their own abilities to control the wind, fire, plants, water and electricity, and to breathe out cold air, etc. Although the power is not great because it has not been fully developed, it can indeed prove one's identity as a mutant. Mr. Logan, George didn't lie to you. We just escaped from the Genetic Modification Research Institute in Mexico City. Gabrielle recounted her experiences and the situation at the institute in detail. After listening to this, Wolverine took a deep breath, looked at George and the children, and refused with some difficulty. I'm afraid I can't and don't have the ability to help you. He doesn't care about his own life or death, but the professor's current situation does not allow him to be involved in such a troublesome matter. If he doesn't handle it properly, the professor may be implicated and die. So even though he was reluctant, he still refused. Gabriella's eyes dimmed when she heard this, but George had expected this and did not give up. He knew the reason why Wolverine refused, and he also knew that Wolverine was a kind person at heart. As long as he gave a reasonable excuse, it would be easy to convince the other party. I once accidentally saw the relevant information about the Westchester incident at the experimental base. You drove so hard to earn money, probably to cure the professor's illness. When you help us, you are actually helping the professor and yourself. If our plan goes according to plan, the professor will get the best medicine and equipment in the world and maybe he can recover to normal. But have you ever thought that the famous playboy Tony Stark might not repay us, but might even betray us? Not everyone in this world is willing to repay you after being saved. Many people may even retaliate against you for their own benefit. Wolverine replied after a moment of silence. He has a deep understanding of this kind of thing. He once saved an officer on the battlefield of World War II. Later, when the officer was about to die of old age, he coveted his self-healing ability and wanted to kill him and take away his self-healing abilities so that he could survive. Chapter 17 Border Factory. When George heard Wolverine say this, instead of being worried, he smiled. Since Wolverine has already considered this, it means that he guessed correctly. Wolverine is just hard on the outside but soft on the inside, and he still wants to help in his heart. We need to see what kind of person Tony Stark is before we can judge. If he is not trustworthy, then you can get a good enough reward from this and leave. With money, you can take your professor to live the life you want and don't have to worry about us anymore. So, what do you think? I need to think about it. Wolverine took out a bottle of liquor from the car seat, drank it in one gulp, then closed his eyes and thought for a long time before slowly replying. Okay, I agree to help you, but there is a condition: you can't bring the professor with you. The professor's situation is not as good as you think. He cannot actively control and use his abilities. Moreover, once he appears in New York, it will cause panic in the government, which will cause more trouble. No problem. George thought about it and nodded. He only thought about using Professor X's abilities, but forgot the impact of Professor X's weapon of mass destruction entering New York, which might even attract people from S.H.I.E.L.D. Rather than that, it's better not to bring it. At worst, the worst that can happen is that Obadiah will be tortured severely. I believe that under the threat of death, the other party will honestly tell the whereabouts of Tony Stark. Actually, it's a good thing this way. After all, Professor X is still unable to move around easily, so it's much more efficient for him and Wolverine to act alone. Then let's get out of here quickly. Those thugs just fired shots. I guess the police will be here soon. Seeing that George had already reached an agreement, Gabriella couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Then, looking at the bodies of the gangsters on the ground, she hurriedly reminded them. Wolverine bent down again, ready to put the wheel back on. Don't worry, it's precisely because of the gunshots that the police won't come so quickly. Well, they are really responsible then. At this time, George also squatted down, and his hands kept changing gestures. Restored to the original condition. The repair spell took effect, and the wheel that had been removed was automatically restored immediately. This was the second spell he could currently cast using gesture casting. It seems that you have more than just the Professor's and Magneto's genes in your body. Wolverine saw this and a look of surprise appeared on his face. George smiled and shrugged. I'm actually not sure how many genes they put into me. Your situation reminds me of a friend who used to be very talkative. He also had a lot of mutant genes inserted into his body and his mouth was sealed. Wolverine sighed as he recalled the memory deep in his mind. Unfortunately, they are all gone now. Friends, the old goes and the new comes. Life must go on. Don't be so pessimistic. George said a casual remark of comfort. In fact, he has always had a question in his mind, that is, whether the current Wolverine has experienced reversing the future, whether he has the memory of two different timelines, or whether there are no two timelines in this universe at all. In X-Men, Days of Future Past, if you change the past, the present will change as well. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, changing the past simply extends a new timeline and does not change the present. However, it was not easy for him to ask about this kind of thing now, so he could only wait until he was familiar with it. Wolverine looked at him in surprise. It seems you really have some of the Professor's genes in you. After the car was repaired, Wolverine drove the luxury stretched car in front to lead the way, while ISA drove the truck with George and the children following closely behind, all the way towards the border. The Professor's situation was special, so Wolverine hid him in a border area where there were almost no people. This used to be a factory run by a multinational smelting company headquartered in Shanghai. It was eventually abandoned due to the chaotic public security situation. Normally, no one would come here. The car stopped in front of an abandoned factory building on the border, and Wolverine introduced it to George. It is precisely because El Paso is close to Mexico, and a large number of Mexicans have sneaked in to live there, resulting in extremely chaotic public security, that they have been able to hide without being discovered. If it were in a city with good public security, it would be impossible to hide. Logan, are they? At this time, a man wrapped in a scarf and a hat, with only his 2 eyes exposed, walked out of the factory cautiously and looked at George and the group of mutant children with some confusion. Caliban, these children are mutants. Go in first, and I will tell you in detail. Wolverine waved his hand and led everyone into the factory. George glanced at the man wrapped in a scarf, and the relevant information flashed through his mind. Caliban, a mutant with the ability to track the location of mutants, was once a black market merchant who made huge profits by selling the traces of mutants. He also helped the Yoklay Genetics Company to hunt down mutants for money. Later on, he suffered from albinism and could no longer see the sun. He began to repent for the crimes he had committed and started to help Wolverine and Professor X hide their tracks. At the end, after seeing Professor X being killed, he was so grief-stricken that he detonated 2 grenades and died together with the enemy. So for now, he is considered a trustworthy mutant. No wonder. No wonder he always said that he was communicating with some people and that there were many new mutants. It turns out that there really are. But Logan, are you really determined to do this? Is this dangerous? Inside the factory, after hearing Logan's words, Caliban frowned tightly. He has sympathy for those mutant children, but he is more worried about Wolverine's safety. There are only 3 of them of the old generation of mutants, and after all these years of getting along with them, he has long regarded Wolverine and the Professor as his only relatives. George is right. Maybe this is the only way to really cure the Professor. You know that the water tank cannot trap the Professor. This is not a solution. We need money, better equipment, and medicine to treat him. Besides, I don't believe the Canadian government will treat those children well. There are no good people in the human government. Wolverine tossed a bag of pills and a card to Caliban. These medicines are enough for the Professor to use for a month. This card contains all the money I have saved over the years. I originally planned to buy a yacht and take you and the Professor to live on the sea. If something unexpected happens and I don't come back, I'll trouble you to take care of the Professor. Okay, I know I can't stop you. I can only tell you that if you don't come back, I won't take care of that difficult old guy alone. I will leave him and the money alone. Caliban took the medicine and the card, was silent for a moment, and finally replied with a smile. Wolverine smiled after a long time. You won't, otherwise you wouldn't have given up all the money you saved and chose to help us. It's your turn to give the medicine. I've been busy all night. Caliban shook his head helplessly, took out a bottle of medicine from the bag and placed it in Wolverine's hand. Apparently, Wolverine was right about him. Chapter 18, Encirclement and Counterattack. Is this the famous Professor X? He looks a lot younger than in the movies. George thought to himself as he watched Professor X being pushed out of the water tank by Wolverine. Come to think of it, if the year is 2029 as in the movie, Professor X would be 97 years old, but the actual year is 2009 and Professor X is 77 years old. If Professor X can recover his abilities, then his safety will be guaranteed. Even if his abilities cannot be fully restored, as long as his sanity is restored, it can help these children develop their abilities better. At this moment, he decided to spend more time on healing magic when he went to Hogwarts to study magic in the future. If modern technology can't cure Professor X, then try using magic. You know, Professor X is the most powerful psychic in the world. He can read the thoughts and memories of others without physical contact, and use his psychic abilities to directly deprive and control the thoughts of others while controlling their actions. If equipped with a brainwave enhancement device, it can even kill all ordinary humans and mutants on Earth. New species, new mutants. Okay, Logan, you must help them. They need you. Professor X looked at the children standing in front of him, especially the little wolf girl Laura, and couldn't help but shed tears. He grabbed Wolverine's hand tightly. Wait a little longer, you will have a new family, don't give up on yourself, everything will be fine. Then promise me that you won't give up either. They also need your guidance, just like you once guided us. Wolverine's eyes gradually became firm, as if he had become the fearless fighter he once was. At this time, George came over. There is no time to lose. Those people at the experimental base will not let us go so easily. We cannot stay here for too long. Now we split into two groups. Logan and I will go to New York to find a way to rescue Tony Stark. Professor, Caliban, Gabriella, and ISA. Take the children to the North Dakota border and wait for news from us. Be careful. A copy of Logan has been created at the experimental base. Caliban, you must always keep an eye out for new mutants approaching. If you find any, you must move as soon as possible. A copy of Logan. Caliban's pupil shrank, and then he pointed to the south. If I'm not mistaken, the guy you mentioned is here. Following Caliban's finger, a long convoy appeared faintly on the empty land in the distance. George narrowed his eyes. It's faster than I thought. That's good. I can take this opportunity to solve it. Otherwise, there will be trouble later. He had long expected the pursuit at the experimental base. With the financial resources and status of Yoclay Genetics, it was not difficult to obtain the corresponding surveillance through local agencies. It would be impossible for them to hide their tracks with a truck that big. If it was before, it would be quite troublesome if he was caught up, because even if he could use magnetism to change the trajectory of the bullet and become a super sharpshooter, it would be useless for X-24. When he runs out of bullets, he will die. But now it's different. It's not that Wolverine can defeat X-24, but that he knows that Wolverine has an adamantium bullet that was originally intended for suicide, which can be used to deal with X-24. After killing X-24, there won't be any major danger at the experimental base for the time being. But it won't be that easy to create another Wolverine clone. In this way, when they go to rescue Tony Stark, they don't have to worry about the children being threatened by the experimental base. It would be even better if there was a chance to kill Sander Rice. I have a plan. Turning to look at Wolverine, he quickly recounted his response strategy. On the other side, Commander Donald, sitting in an armored jeep, was also making strategic deployments through the walkie-talkie. Surround the factory building in a moment, and don't let anyone go. If there is any unusual movement, kill them immediately, especially Subject No. 757. Following his boss's orders, he mobilized all the connections he could and soon found the trace of the truck. He also discovered that the escaped mutants had contacted Wolverine, who was living in seclusion in El Paso. In fact, they already knew about the whereabouts of Wolverine and the Professor. The reason why they didn't hunt down the two like they did other mutants was because the boss said that letting them live like this would be more painful for them than killing them. But now that the escaped mutant children are mixed together with Wolverine and his men, it's a bit difficult to deal with. So after getting the boss's approval, they brought the X-24 this time just in case. Originally, the boss wanted to come and see the actual combat effectiveness of the X-24 in person, but he was slightly injured in the previous laboratory explosion, and he was also worried about No. 757's marksmanship, so he stayed at the base. There were more than 20 vehicles in the convoy, which surrounded the dilapidated factory building. Each vehicle was filled with strong men wearing bulletproof vests and armed with live ammunition. After getting out of the vehicles, they held guns and occupied various shooting points. There were nearly 100 people in total. At a certain distance from the factory, a sniper was hiding on the roof of an armored vehicle that was about the size of a bus, and inside the vehicle was the ultimate killer, X-24. I didn't expect to meet you in this way, Wolverine, my former idol. Hand over those children, and I won't disturb the peaceful life of you and that old man. Donald took off his sunglasses, put his hands behind his back and looked at Wolverine, who was standing alone at the factory door, his tone full of ridicule. Judging from the look on his face, he obviously didn't take the once famous Wolverine seriously at all. I'm sorry, I don't know what you are talking about. This is private territory. Please leave. Wolverine thought about the time-delaying strategy George had mentioned before, resisted the urge to stab the bastard to death with his claws, and patiently persuaded him. Donald pointed to the truck at the door. You've disappointed me so much. You probably can't afford the price of lying to me. I don't know who that truck belongs to, and there's definitely no one here that you're looking for. Wolverine still denied it. Donald signaled to his men behind him, and more than 20 people immediately rushed into the factory with guns. About 5 minutes later, they walked out of the factory and shook their heads at Donald. Donald raised his eyebrows when he saw this, looked around, and finally smiled and fixed his eyes on the abandoned water tank next to the factory. That's a good idea. I guess they must be there, including the old guy. It's just an ordinary reservoir. There's really no one here that you're looking for. Wolverine's expression changed and he slowly put one hand into his pocket. Donald ignored Wolverine and directly signaled his men to search the reservoir. At this moment, Wolverine quickly took out a tube of reagent from his pocket and quickly stabbed it into his arm. Chapter 19 It's decided to be you, little wolf girl. Not good. Donald reacted and stepped back immediately. Of course he recognized the reagent, because it was developed by their experimental base, a drug specifically used to enhance the abilities of mutants in a short period of time. Once Wolverine is injected, his strength can be restored to its peak before the drug expires. Wolverine at his peak is definitely the most terrifying killer. Sniper, target Wolverine. However, the response from the intercom was, X-23 and Subject 757 have been spotted. They are heading my way. Release X-24 to deal with them, and you continue to snipe Wolverine. After letting his men take over, Donald gave orders to the sniper. He didn't know how X-23 and Subject 757 managed to escape silently under their tight encirclement, but it didn't matter. As long as X-24 was released, he could definitely deal with the two of them. According to experimental data, X-23 is absolutely no match for X-24, and no matter how accurate the shooting skills of Subject 757 are, he cannot hurt X-24. He is completely restrained. The most important thing now is to take medicine to restore Wolverine to his peak state. In just a few words, the other party has killed 10 of his elite men in the midst of heavy siege and hail of bullets. If the sniper rifle was not used to restrict his movements, he and all the remaining people might be killed by Wolverine. No wonder the boss has such a special liking for Wolverine. Roger that. The sniper over there fired a shot, and Wolverine was hit and knocked down. The others immediately rushed forward and suppressed Wolverine with bullets to prevent him from getting up. On the other side, George and the little wolf girl were running towards the bus. They did not escape from the encirclement, but left the factory long before the enemy surrounded them and hid behind nearby obstacles. When the other party's attention was all attracted by Wolverine, he quietly rushed towards the car where X-24 was obviously imprisoned. As long as we can deal with X-24 in advance, the battle will be half won. However, what he didn't expect was that the other party actually took them so seriously that they even brought a sniper with them. This did not appear in the movie. Fortunately, just in case, he also brought the little wolf girl with him who had good fighting ability. If the sniper aimed the gun at him, well, he would just raise the little wolf girl as a shield. After all, with the little wolf girl's self-healing ability, she will not be killed even if she is hit by a sniper rifle. Although it is a bit cruel to do so, there is nothing we can do if it really comes to that. This was a fight of life and death. If they failed, it wouldn't just be him who would die, but everyone, including those 30-odd mutant children. The little wolf girl was too small to block his whole body, so he could only raise her body to block his upper body, which had more vital parts. The two running legs in the lower body were not so easy to be hit. However, he has wizard blood and amazing vitality. Even if he was accidentally shot, as long as it was not a vital part, he would not die easily. Once he gets closer, he will be able to influence the sniper. Currently, he cannot change the trajectory of the sniper bullet, but he can still influence the sniper rifle itself and make it shake and unable to aim. In fact, the situation was better than he expected. The sniper did not turn his gun towards them in the end, but continued to aim at the factory. Obviously, Wolverine helped them attract enough attention. But he did not ignore them, but released X-24 with a fierce look on his face. Well done! George couldn't help but look delighted when he saw that the back door of the bus had been opened and Wolverine's clone X-24 jumped out and ran towards them with a roar. The other party's action was exactly what he wanted. At the same time, 4 elite soldiers got off the bus with X-24, but they did not come with X-24. Instead, they set up a camera, apparently intending to record the battle scenes of X-24. In fact, these soldiers knew the fear of X-24 and did not believe that X-23 and Experiment 757 could win. Recording the battle video of X-24 was the request of the boss, because this was also a real-life test of X-24, and the video must be recorded for analysis afterwards. Seeing that they were getting closer and closer to X-24, George picked up the little wolf girl, then raised his hand, took out his submachine gun and shot X-24 twice. He did not use the adamantium bullet immediately, because if he killed X-24 now, the sniper would react immediately and the others would also focus their attacks on him. It will be dangerous then. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he was unwilling to use the little wolf girl as a shield. Therefore, he had to take advantage of the other party's relaxed vigilance and get as close as possible. Once the distance reached his ability, he would have room to perform as a sharpshooter. Bang! Bang! 2 bullets went straight for X-24's eyes. The bullets could not kill X-24, but it would take time for the injured eyes to recover. Seeing George shooting at him, X-24 immediately raised his arms to block in front of him. Unfortunately, George's bullet was not straight. It suddenly turned into an arc before encountering X-24's arm, and finally hit X-24's eye accurately. X-24's eyeball was blown out and he immediately stopped with a scream. The eyeball can recover, but the pain will not be reduced at all. It's decided to be you, little wolf girl. While X-24's eyes were still recovering, George used all his strength to throw the little wolf girl away. Go take out that sniper. The little wolf girl flew over X-24's head, landed with a tactical roll, and continued to rush towards the sniper and 4 soldiers on the bus without hesitation. At this time, X-24's eyeballs had recovered, and he immediately reached out with his claws to grab George. The speed was so fast that George didn't have time to react. Brush! Although George retreated in time, the submachine gun in his hand was still broken into 2 halves by X-24's claw. The second claw was George's neck. It's really brutal. George also took a breath when he saw this, and then the magnetic force burst out with all its strength, concentrating on X-24's arm. Although he is not Magneto, who can easily control Wolverine, whose body is made of adamantium, the force of dozens of kilograms acting on X-24's arm can definitely cause considerable impact. Sure enough, due to the effect of magnetism, X-24's arm suddenly paused, allowing George to dodge again. George didn't want to fight anymore, so he took the opportunity to bypass X-24 and rushed towards the bus. Feeling that he was being fooled by George, X-24 became furious and turned around to continue chasing George. George didn't fight head-on at all. He knew he couldn't win, so he just used magnetism to influence X-24's limbs, cleverly dodging X-24's attacks again and again, and then kept getting closer to the bus. There was no way. The time he had acquired the ability was too short. Even though it was enhanced by his wizard bloodline, it still had not been fully developed. Originally, his body was developed to the limit to be able to control 100 kilograms of magnetic force, but at the beginning he could only use 10 kilograms. Later, he had the blood of a wizard and can now use dozens of kilograms. If he is given a few more years to adapt, the limit of his strength development is estimated to be several hundred kilograms of strength. With several hundred pounds, it is easy to lift the X-24 into the air and trample it however you want. Or if he studied magic for a while longer, he could easily be knocked down with a stun spell. In general, there is hope in the future, but it is not possible now, so this is the only way to do it. Chapter 20, Thank you for the sniper rifle. While George was dodging X-24's attack in a somewhat awkward manner and getting closer to the bus, the little wolf girl had already run to the bus. The 4 soldiers who were filming noticed the little wolf girl approaching and immediately took out their submachine guns and fired wildly at her. The little wolf girl was also very experienced in combat. With her thin body, she flipped and jumped like a real wolf, dodging most of the bullets shot at her vital parts as much as she could. She endured the pain from the remaining bullets and pounced on the 4 people fiercely. She had been trained in various killing techniques since she was a child, and had long been accustomed to this kind of battle. The sniper on top of the bus felt something was wrong when he heard the noise below. He immediately gave up assisting in sniping Wolverine in the factory and turned his gun to aim at the little wolf girl below. The little wolf girl had just killed 2 soldiers when she was immediately shot in the chest. This shot was different from the previous ones. It was incredibly powerful and actually knocked her flying. She screamed in pain. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the remaining 2 warriors quickly stepped forward and pressed down the little wolf girl's arms and legs, preventing her from getting up. The little wolf girl is still a child after all. Although she has excellent physical fitness and killing skills, she is still not as good as adults in terms of pure strength, especially these 2 muscular men. No matter how she struggled, she couldn't get up. I wonder if you can recover after I explode your head. The sniper turned his head to see Subject 757 fleeing in a panic under the attack of X-24. He estimated that he could not hold out for much longer, so a cruel look appeared on his face and he aimed his gun at the head of the little wolf girl who was pinned to the ground below. He didn't believe that the little wolf girl would be fine after being shot in the head by a sniper rifle. If one shot couldn't kill her, he would shoot her 2 or 3 times. If she really couldn't be killed, it would be a pleasure to hear her scream under his gun. Almost. At this moment, George also discovered that the little wolf girl was restrained. He calculated the distance and knew it was time to take action. He used his full power to act on X-24's ankle, causing him to stagger and his attack missed. He took this opportunity not to continue running away, but to pull out the pistol that had been hidden in his chest. He opened the safety and placed the pistol against X-24's temple. Game over. Boom. With a gunshot, the first adamantium bullet that was loaded went down the barrel and shot into X-24's head, killing him instantly. Hearing the gunshot, the sniper who was about to shoot the little wolf girl in the head subconsciously looked up at subject number 757. His face suddenly changed when he found X-24 lying motionless. He quickly turned the gun around again and aimed at subject number 757 who was running towards him. How could this be? However, at this moment, he found that his sniper rifle was shaking involuntarily and even wanted to fly out of his hand. Although he tried his best to suppress it, it was of no avail and it even got worse. How could he aim accurately when the gun was shaking like that? He barely fired a few shots in a row, but all of them missed. Bang! Bang! He remotely controlled the sniper rifle by shaking it and running in an S shape to dodge several sniper shots. Seeing the effective range of the pistol, George raised his hand and fired 2 shots at the 2 burly men who were suppressing the little wolf girl. The 2 sturdy men were shot in the head and fell to the ground one after another, and the little wolf girl broke free, inserted her claws into the bus, quickly climbed onto the roof of the bus, and pounced on the sniper. She is very vindictive. If someone shoots her and it hurts her, she will also make the other person feel pain. Commander, X-24 has been killed. Be careful of X-23 and the experimental subject. Seeing X-23 flying towards him, the sniper knew he was doomed, and hurriedly reported to Commander Donald on the walkie-talkie. However, before he was halfway through the report, his chest was pierced. George came to the bottom of the bus and saw the bloody little wolf girl dragging the sniper's body off the roof. He couldn't help but twitch his lips. Okay, it's okay. Leave it to me next. He walked up to the little wolf girl, touched her head, picked her up, took the submachine guns and sniper rifles of the 4 soldiers, and came to the driver's seat of the bus. If the situation wasn't special this time, he wouldn't want the little wolf girl, who was still a child, to join such a brutal battle. After placing the little wolf girl on the co-pilot seat, he touched the sniper rifle and couldn't help but sigh. Thank you for the sniper rifle. His current ability is not enough to change the trajectory of sniper bullets, but that doesn't mean he won't be able to do so in the future. Imagine a sniper rifle that has a range of over 2,000 meters, can hit the target every time, and can even turn. What a powerful weapon it is! He started the bus and rushed straight towards the factory. When he reached his limit, he smashed the glass in front of the bus. He controlled 4 submachine guns in front and fired at full power. Countless bullets drew arcs and shot out. Inside the factory, Donald looked at Wolverine, who was half kneeling on the ground and already out of breath, and taunted him. The effect of the medicine has worn off, I wonder how long you can hold on. To tell you the truth, your backup, Experiment 757 and X-23, will probably be captured by my men soon, and I will send you both off when the time comes. But just as he finished speaking, he heard the sniper's report and screams on the intercom. Wolverine burst into laughter upon seeing this, and stood up again with his strong willpower. Looks like we're sending you on your way. Commander, it's bad. The bus is rushing towards the factory. Our people can't stop it. At this time, a team leader rushed in from outside the factory. You guys are great. This won't end like this. Retreat. Looking at Wolverine standing there, not knowing how much fighting power he had left, and the fierce gunfire and screams coming from outside, Donald gritted his teeth, and fled in a panic with the remaining less than 20 men in his car. Seeing that Donald finally escaped, Wolverine could no longer hold on and sat down on the ground. A moment later, a bus broke through the factory door and rushed in, stopping in front of Wolverine. The car door opened and George and the little wolf girl jumped out. Are you okay, Logan? They can't die yet, these bastards. If it were 20 years ago, none of them would have been able to escape. Wolverine stood up with difficulty. Don't swear in front of the kids, but Logan, you just behaved no worse than you did 20 years ago. At this time, Professor X pushed his wheelchair out of the water tank with everyone else. George said. Although we have temporarily repelled them, we should not stay here for long. According to the previous plan, everyone should organize themselves and split into 2 groups to set off quickly. George. We have decided not to go to Canada. The professor is right. If we leave before Friday, the time will be too tight and it will be too dangerous for you. We can't be so selfish. At this time, Gabriella suddenly stood up and spoke to George.